Hello. I wasn't emotionally prepared for that. Welcome back, everyone, to week 7 of our Creator Spotlight. So nice to have you all here. This is a very special week. It's our VR week. So like I told you, we want to bring you as many diverse creators as possible. I'm actually very excited about this week because I know very little about VR. So I'm really excited to learn about everyone. We're going to be talking to Alta about their awesome open world RPG game, A Township Tale. And we'll also be checking out tomorrow Arashi Castle the Sin, so by Endeavor One. So if you're into stealth action, VR games, that's in the where you play as the shinobi assassin during feudal Japan, definitely come check that one out. And then we'll also be checking Zenith, The Last City. That one is an MMORPG, very special, kind of like one of those solo devs that are just somehow geniusly making these massive games on dots on top of it. So we'll definitely check it out. But before we go to that, Hassan, what should we be checking out this week?
It's the mythical one-man MMO team.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't. You said week 7. I can't believe we're already on week 7 of the Creative Spotlight series. That's crazy. And this is our first VR game we're looking at. Am I right?
Yeah.
It's the first one, right? Yeah, That's amazing. And if you haven't seen the other ones, you can check out our YouTube channel. We have a whole playlist there for the Creator Spotlight videos, and we've looked at so many other games like Death's Door or Harold Halibut. Incredible games. Go check those out.
I know. The response has been so good. You guys have been so sweet, leaving so many cool messages.
Thank you so much for the amazing. It's like it keeps us going. It's like you guys are loving it, and so we want to keep doing it. So So we're gonna look at we're gonna jump to my screen and look at what's going on the asset store right now. We have mega bundles to help you prototype your project on sale right now. And so these bundles come in 3 tiers. I'll just wait for it to show up on the screen. Pros, okay, I'll talk a little bit about it. So there's 3 bundles. You can start at the lowest tier at $9.99. And it gives you, there we are. The lowest tier at $9.99. And here you get a few assets that'll help you like get your character moving around the scene and have some like tools, like prop tools. And then at $14.99, you get everything in the previous tier, in addition to some weapons, mechs, and gun explosion sounds, some like 2D projectile bullets, quickly put together like a shooter or shoot 'em up game. You could use these for like a top-down shoot 'em up. And then finally, you can get everything, all of these assets, a great deal. You're saving up to 90%. Up to 95% for $19.99. And here we have like environments, spell effects, different like animated characters and fighters. We have like character movement, things like this. Like an easy character controller that lets you like move across all kinds of environments, steps, little like gravel on the floor. We also have like things that'll help you with building AI with lines of sight and enemies and things like that. So definitely check these assets out if you want to put something together very quickly in Editor. So that's what we have on the asset store. 3 different bundles. You can pick the one you like. But for today, we're gonna jump right back to today's show, and we're gonna look at the trailer for the game we're looking at, Township Tale. We're gonna cut to that trailer now.
Welcome. Hello, everyone. Thank you to the Alta team for waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning to be here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We saw the sun rising through their windows.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why don't you introduce yourself? Boramy, why don't you start?
Yep. So hi, I'm Boramy. I'm one of the co-founders of Alta and the game director for Township Tale.
Hi, I'm Victor Nascimento. I am one of the programmers in the team. I am the lead programmer for gameplay and an engine.
Awesome. So nice of you to be here. This is why we're doing the stream a little bit later than we usually do, guys. So sorry to the European friends, but hello to all of our friends in Asia and APAC. Very nice to see you today for the first time. So tell us what a Township Tale is.
Okay, so a Township Tale is a VR multiplayer RPG where players come together in this abandoned town that has this long forgotten history, and they turn that into their new home where they can become things like blacksmiths, woodcutters, miners, archers, and warriors. And then players work together to craft gear, explore the world, seek dangers, and collect materials and craft new gear. One of the things about a Township Tale is that we really try and embrace what VR can do. And so we aim to be as physical as possible, where you're really swinging that hammer over an anvil and to watch steel get forged. You're cutting down trees and breaking boulders and really interacting in the 3D space in the way that only VR really can.
Yeah, I will admit that I'm one of those people who didn't understand Minecraft when it came out. People are like, well, don't you like mining? I'm like, no. And don't you like crafting? I'm like, no. But this game, I have to say that I think that tactical element of VR, I'm so excited to forge in this game. I love when people are cooking or eating. Everything about the cooking mechanic is like really special, actually. And somebody mentioned this to me before, but the fact that it's VR like really embodies the fact that you're part of a coexistence, right, with other people. It really, for me, that's the whole aspect.
You're really
of
sharing space.
Yeah, I really like that. So tell me more. Tell me, this is a live game. So what's your content strategy look like right now?
Yes. So Township Tale is live. We kind of came out to PC players at the start of 2018, and we've been in development since 2016. Mm-hmm. And it kind of started out with just a couple of us, like myself and two others, just prototyping a little bit into what this kind of survival-esque RPG game could look like in VR. And so we kind of came up with some ideas, and we really sought to create what we think is kind of the next evolution of games in how VR can really open up a new presence, like you guys mentioned about feeling like you're there with other people. That was actually one of the core foundations of us making this game, was that the idea of multiplayer and what it means to be around other people and how can we make that more special. Since 2018, we've released updates almost every 2 weeks. So I think we're at 77 updates for PC.
Oh my gosh. I didn't realize that.
And yeah, it doesn't include all of the little kind of like hotfixes and patches along the way. At the start of this year, we've slowed down a little bit because we've just launched on Quest in about a month ago, 15th of July, right?
Yes.
And that's kind of blown up our player base, and so now we're trying to resolve some slight differences between the two platforms. But then we'll be looking to going back to a fairly regular schedule again once we're through with that.
Cool. So kind of curious, how many players do you actually have at any one time?
At any one time, I'm not actually sure of the number. Like we typically look at like our daily numbers of like players. Yeah. And we pretty much jumped from about a couple thousand to about 23,000.
Okay, wow. And this is in VR. Wow, I'm like really impressed by that.
This is in VR,
yeah. And imagine that like every single one of those is playing an average 2 hours on the Quest, which means they're running through the entire device battery in every sitting.
Yeah.
So,
that's so funny.
They're playing as much as they can.
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah, that's the one feedback I kept seeing about the game online was like, every time I play through the entire battery. That's the one consistent thing I kept seeing everywhere about it.
Yeah.
Nice. So I mean, yeah. So this game has been out, or you've been working on it for a really long time. I'm just really impressed that you have such a growing community. So community is a huge part of this game, obviously. And I think you had one built and were leveraging it quite a bit even before the game launched, right?
Yeah. So because we were kind of such like a self-start type of game and company, we knew we didn't want to try and launch straight away into big platforms like Steam or Epic Games, at least for the considerable start and where we currently are. So we wanted to get people to come on and play the game, but we also needed a bit of like a support way to talk to them, like a way that we can debug all the things that might happen that's wrong. So what we actually did is the only place you could get the game for a long time was through a link that we had in our Discord channel. Mm-hmm. And so all of the kind of like online presence we had, we would lead people to Discord so that they could talk directly to us. We could help them get the game installed, setting up their VR because it was quite early on, as well as kind of see how development's going and kind of get their feedback on what they think the vision of the game has for VR. Because there was a bit of uncertainty when we first started, like whether or not people would want this. We were worried that like we were too late coming into VR. There was lots of like kind of concerns about our investment going into this. But our player base and our fans just really kind of perked us up about the idea and were really supportive and still are really supportive of everything we do. It's a very wholesome community there where like I regularly join voice chats with them to just talk about life and games and VR and stuff like that.
I can tell just from the chat how comfortable they feel with you. We're getting a lot of comments about how smooth your hair is looking today, and I don't know if that's some kind of inside joke with the community. Oh man.
Thanks to Township Tale community.
Thanks everybody.
But yeah, I would love for you to show us like a little bit of that, like the launcher you have for jumping into the game.
Yep. So as I said, we're not on any major PC platforms. We're kind of on our own. And so here we have on my screen the Alta launcher, which is where we manage the environment in which our community can kind of keep track of the game and learn about what's new and manage updates and things like that. This is also where community kind of grows into like the servers and the groups that people play as part of. So over here on the right are all of these icons are different groups or like servers that people play on or that I'm a part of. And so that's where I can kind of manage who's a part of it. I can promote people, kick, ban them, make them moderators, or transfer ownership of the server if I want to. And that's kind of as well as change many of the settings. So this is my server Garbage Beans that will be jumping in a little later. I can set how it's visible, and we take a lot of inspiration from our roots of Discord in how we organize this with like role permissions and kind of colors. The whole icons on the right, like it was such a huge part of us building the game that they've kind of developed this design language for all of our players about how to manage their memberships, I suppose. And it's the type of thing that I think like I expect more games to try and kind of leverage, particularly with making their own kind of platform like this. So
I'm wondering for the launcher itself, like when in the process that this came along, right? So like you probably had the game first, and then when did you decide, okay, we need a launcher for this, we need some kind of manager?
Pretty much the moment we launched, we had the launcher because we knew we needed to do patches, so we wanted to deliver things in a way that was quite clear. So if there was an update available, this would say update, and then I could update the game. And then as the game and the community grew, and we needed to leverage some people to help us test new features that maybe were a bit riskier, a lot more prone to bugs, and we didn't want to release it out to everybody because there's different levels of expectations. We have this kind of branching system that lets people jump between different versions of the game. So you can see here, like, for example, currently we're on 77.14. That's our release. But there are some people testing 77.15. And we give those, like, we give access to those by hand at the moment, just because it's quite controlled. But there's also this supporter branch here, where some of our players who have been supporting us for a long time by being a monthly member, they can access some kind of like mini game previews that we kind of put together to also test features that are far more experimental and create almost like a second game about those features. Mm-hmm. And this lets us all deliver that quite nicely in a way that people can stay kind of surrounded by the Township Tale environment.
Yeah. This is a private server, right? The one that you're going to show us?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Yes.
No, you guys can't use it. You can use the invite code, but they probably won't accept it.
Yes. The invite code will be there.
I won't be accepting it. I didn't think about the invite code being there. But thankfully, yeah, I think I do have to accept invites. So we're not gonna get stream sniped like we thought.
We talked about this, Boramy, right before.
Everybody jumping in. That would be interesting.
It'd be hilarious. But yeah, I think that it helps a lot when you're talking about these experimental servers. It helps a lot that you are so close to the community, because I imagine you could, release a new update, jump into the chat and be like, hey, who wants to test this with me? Or like, you can just quickly rally people towards the experimental servers, right?
Yeah. It's like we've done it so many times now that the process is quite smooth. And there's all sorts of like things that like I frequently ask, like even on my day-to-day work. Like, for example, right now we're working on some kind of like some menu UI stuff. And so when it comes down to deciding icons, for example, I post some options and then I kind of see what people think they recognize those icons are, and really try and engage them with development as much as we can.
And how do you gather that feedback?
Pretty much from like, for the most part, like at the time we just look at the chat. We also have a discourse site. It's kind of like our forum for feedback, and that's kind of the first place we look for things like feedback and bugs, and then those all go into our internal tracking lists to kind of help the production team schedule things out.
Are you also in that space, or do you have a community manager or teams like helping you with all that?
We have some people in the team that manage that a bit more, but I do like it's I guess down to like some individual discretion as to who on the development team goes through and looks through the list, because they're quite extensive and written in varying levels of formatting.
So currently on the team there is no dedicated community manager.
I wouldn't say there's a dedicated person. Like it's kind of between myself, one of my co-founders, and some of the moderators of the community. There's one person in particular that like I typically look to for a lot of community related things. His name's Mantax. He'll like getting shouted out, so I'll say his name.
Nice.
That's somebody that I usually approach about kind of community related things.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I guess that means the system you have must be so well organized for it to be feasible to do it that way.
Yep. I think a key part is that we see quite consistent messaging about stuff. So it's kind of like we've booked out of all the feedback what we already know, and to the point where like new things just kind of fit somewhere in this timeline, and it's just continuously like we always know what the next 6 months of what we're doing look like. So it's quite set in that way.
Cool. I would love for anybody who's watching who's not from your community, I'd love for us to jump into the game and so they can actually see how things work, how it goes.
All right. So hopefully this will all pan out okay.
We're gonna get Boramy in a headset.
Yeah. Okay.
This is the moment that is not rehearsed.
First time we do this.
What is that?
Okay, yep, headphones fit. That's good. It's always...
This was only theoretical. Like, oh yeah, it will fit. Yes. Let's hope it does.
Yeah.
I'm glad it does.
Okay, so I guess I should talk a bit about where we are now. This is our main menu.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay? Just so I can stand from the mic and you can stare at my chest and the Alta logo. This is the main menu where players can see different servers and join them. They can manage their friends. They can see a bit of an inbox when they receive new friend invites. And here's where they can manage servers that they're all a part of. Out here, we have a bit of a customization. So you can, if you're waiting for a server to restart because of an update or because the moderator might be doing some things, we do want people to kind of have things to do when they're hanging out here. Mm-hmm. And customization is probably one of the more creative aspects that people tend to engage in. Here's a little sneak peek, actually, because our community don't have this jacket yet, but that's coming out today. That's completely coincidental. I did not. This character gets randomly generated when we join.
Every time you boot up the game, we randomly build a character for you, so you can have a look at everything that you have. And there's a lot of times you jump in and the character looks amazing, and I was like, oh my god, I never thought of doing that, right? It's a super nice thing to have.
There's certain combinations that you might find interesting. And so here are some of the presets that I've made. And these are kind of like bubble heads.
That's so cute.
And you apply them by just kind of releasing them there on the character. I'm showing this now because in the server we're joining, I've already made a character. So I thought I would show this here at first. Mm-hmm. And then here is actually the catalog. I know. It's going to be the most expensive merch in the world, probably. But
a thing that I would love is so that people could say, hey, can you make this bubble head of me? And they send us the account, they send us which bubble head it is, and we print them out, 3D print them out. I will go crazy over it.
That would be amazing. That sounds like a business of its own. You're signing yourself up for
we need a second startup just for that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. You got to go to the mobile game route. You know, they have a whole retail business side of things.
Okay, and so here we have different categories of clothing articles like beards, and I can for some of them that I have lots of things on, I can kind of do like a swipe to cycle through them, and then I can just grab different clothes and apply them straight on. I can randomize, undo, and this is our little. So because these look like toys, like whilst we're on the toys topic, this is what we call the gacha crank. Because you twist that and it has this satisfying plunge that
it is literally called gacha crank on the code. So.
And then this is, if you don't like a preset, you can incinerate them in here.
I love this. I love this.
There's no screaming sounds in there yet.
So fun. I love how everything is so tactile. You know, it's not just buttons. It's like grab and twist and pull, and it's so good.
This
everything's so reactive.
And I think so. And then once you're done with customizing your character, in the game we have a little pedestal that you just stand on, and then you can exit the world. Mm-hmm. And you can also look at some of the cosmetics available for purchase. And so this lets you really try them on and see what you might like about them. So I can try on this skirt. Maybe we'll try on this shirt as well. I already own them, so it won't show that they're not purchased, but you can color clothes in the game as well by simply painting them with your brush.
And there's something that we do that is quite unique, is the fact that when you buy a skin for your character in a Township Tale, you actually acquire each individual item, so you can mix and match.
Oh, nice.
And that's what allows almost everybody to have a very unique look.
Yeah.
So Boramy can put that explorer hat on a librarian, or you can put gloves of a climber on a blacksmith. So you can suddenly make these very unique combinations, and then color each item individually.
And what I love is each item doesn't have just one color. Like I noticed you're painting the details on the shirt, not just the shirt itself.
And some of that gets quite elaborate as well, where we have some jackets that might have 6 colors, for example, on the more extreme side.
Wow.
How does your community like that? That's an intense amount of modability for your characters. I mean, that's my favorite game, customizing characters.
I think that's our community's favorite game as well in a lot of ways. It's a lot of the time when we release new cosmetics, it's almost like the new. It's like a new game update for a lot of people because they can kind of get excited about trying out these different combinations and seeing what they can achieve.
People are asking Victor to smack the whiteboard.
Smack the whiteboard. It's because in the past we used to have when we were in the office on the pre-COVID days, we had a whiteboard that was right in the middle of the office space, and we would smack it every time. You know, like you are in VR, you can't see anything, and you're like, oh, let me kill this word, bam, on the whiteboard. So the whiteboard is full of dents.
Oh my God.
And it's quite cool. I have to say.
Oh, man. I have to say, I really love your community. You can they've just flooded the chat, and this is not even it's just your community in chat right now, just taking over, and I love it.
I didn't wonder all about that.
It's wonderful.
They're gonna spill all the beans, all the secrets,
all the garbaggio beans.
Garbaggio beans.
Okay, so now I'll join the server, and this is this orb interaction is something we borrowed from one of our favorite first VR games that came out, which is The Lab by Valve.
Oh,
and they kind of did it to show how kind of show VR because they worked on the in partnership with HTC for the Vive and building Steam VR. And they have this orb to enter these different worlds, and we always like the idea of kind of looking in here, and you can see this 360 scope of the town, and that's kind of like you entering that world. Yeah.
How do you actually enter it? Do you
you just kind of put it in your face.
Nice.
You can hold it there, or you can release it on it, and then you'll join. Hopefully, everything turns out fine with this in Australian. I'm so nervous about live demos. We've attended some conferences in the past where there were a lot of technical nightmares. Okay, so here I am in the town. It's a bit dark.
Don't help with there, Boramy.
Yeah, Victor's going to do some magic to make it daytime for us. So we'll get to have a brief look at how the day-night cycle is about to shift.
Yes.
So you can see these starry skies and the moon up there.
Yes, it's coming.
Yeah. There's the sunrise. Yep.
Ooh.
That's so
Very
cool.
natural.
I love that you just made that happen, Victor. That was one of the coolest things we've done. That was so hacker of you.
I wish it was like. I'm gonna open the CMD here. I'm also gonna do some clicky clackety, but no, it is with some work from Joe. He made this quite more unique.
Yeah. So here we are in town.
Oh my God.
This is amazing.
So we have a selfie camera that we sometimes use to both test how the cosmetics look, as well as people. Oops, I took a picture by accident. People do a lot of videos like this, kind of like in real life.
I love this. This is like photo
mode.
It's like photo mode on on speed. It's so great.
Yeah.
Oh my God, can you do a welcome to my crib video right now? Is your house close by?
We do have a lot of camera features as well,
Walk us through your house.
Like focus. That's definitely going to happen when we have player housing in the game. We're going to do my crib style of video.
That's definitely do that.
We also he brought me showing there's focus where he can have filters like Instagram.
Yeah, so this kind of controls focus so that you can focus on different things. And I can kind of swipe through different filters. This is the cast button that I just used. There's a timer, and then there's rotating to a different perspective. This is a really it's so much fun, and the pictures get saved to your hard drive. So that's how most people share their adventure in our Discord.
Can they be shared directly, like the social media?
Not currently. No, we don't have straight to social media.
In a sense, because this feature started mostly because a lot of people wanted to share their adventures on Discord, but they were doing like a screenshot of their monitor, and then they trying to put, so all of that was a bit too convoluted for most people. And then we just created this camera as a response, and they could add themselves to Discord, because at that stage they might want to add to Discord or to Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. So people were sharing as they wanted, right? Because for us, we had to juggle so many things. So then having to connect to every single platform, and then we're gonna need to have authentication. So those things might come, no promises, but
Hint, hint.
who knows?
Ooh. Who would know?
We are actually only 3 programmers as of now. We are trying to hire more programmers. We're gonna try to drop that as many times as we can, because we are really trying to look for some more people.
We're gonna throw the link in the chat for those who are interested. For the wonderful community who loves Alta so much, you can work with them. I'm kind of curious, since you're talking about all these features, I think it's really cool that you also have like filters in there. Like you're really trying to recreate a lot of the ways that people use social media and record and create content. Kind of curious, like, did you have any roundtables or thought about people streaming this on Twitch? It's like a whole challenge, right, to stream VR games.
Yeah. So we have a Live integration. That's a kind of a program that lets people have this third-person camera set up in the game world, where we can. I think they can't show their avatars, can they, Victor?
I think they can, yes. As far as I remember, that's a beauty on Live.
Yeah, so I think it'll essentially act as if we had like this was like a third-person type of view, and then people can act, so they can show their emotions a bit better. But they can also comp in their like if they have a green screen in real life and a camera set up in a similar position, they can comp themselves in. Or they can use Live also lets them use a third-party avatar that they can kind of put in themselves for people who have like virtual avatars that they use for streaming. Yeah, there's something really interesting in that corner. That's why my eyes are looking that way.
What is it?
Yeah. It's a carpet.
Can we just like replace for the rest of this show, like as Borami's talking about the game, have this feed as Boramy and just have Boramy talk to us as a VR character and act like nothing's happening?
Like nothing's different.
Like nothing's different.
It would be funny if Boramy was speaking and suddenly the enemies start to show up.
Oh my god.
It's not like I can make them appear, right? It's a different kind of stream sniping.
Or Victor just starts inviting other members.
Invite everybody.
Join.
I'm not that evil. Just a little bit.
Chat is so disapproving of that idea. They're like, no, Victor, you can't do that.
So what are you doing right now, Boramy? What is this?
So right now I'm going through the forging process.
Okay.
So this here is our smelter. And this is where players can turn ores into ingots, and then ingots into forging recipes. And this here is what we call a mold. And this defines what object I'm about to create. So this is going to be a short sword that's worth 6 ingots.
Amazing.
So that's how much I have to place
on there. I love that. Boramy is now actually the VR character on this.
VR camera.
Yes.
So here I can place the mold in there, and up here is the hatch where we can see that there's this little indicator here that says put ores or ingots in here. Yeah. I think. Yeah,
and so you're just pulling the ingots from your satchel, your backpack.
I grabbed them from this. Oops. Over here is the tray. So whenever you're done with stuff in the smelter, you can pull this lever, and they get dumped into this hopper that puts them here, so you can grab them easily. Just so that people can expend things without having to worry about putting it away immediately into like into a shelf or into their bag if they don't have space.
Ooh, that's a great feature actually for crafting. I think that's like one of my biggest annoyances with. That's why I don't generally like games with a lot of crafting, or I've gotten tired of it. Is that it's the resource management, placing things everywhere, and that's a really nice little way to handle that.
And so now I can put the pouch in there, and then when I close the hatch, you'll see that the smelter starts kind of growing. You can see it's lit down there, and I think if I blow this fast enough, we'll start to see the smelter eyes kind of shoot up there, and that speeds up the process.
I love the smelter. It looks so cool.
It's so fun. It has so many different. I love how big it is and how every side of it has a different tactile thing to interact with. Oh, it's so nice.
And so now here we have the thing we just created, which is an iron short sword blade. Whoops, took another photo. That's just like using a camera in real life, constantly tapping the photo button. And so, hello and welcome to my forge.
Oh my god. You don't have a health yet?
No, I don't have health. We've got some in here, but first we'll need to kind of flatten this blade out because you can see it's quite thick and like almost like a cube.
Yeah. Oh, you need to hammer it down. Okay. The pointing is what gets me. The pointing kills me. I can't help but laugh every time I see you pointing at something.
Like
it's so accurate.
I think that is one of the biggest things in VR, right? Is because when you are playing with people, you're not like just like in a shooter where like, oh yeah, you go that way and then you go that way. In this case, you actually point to things, say, hey, here's the thing, let's go that place. And it is, and I'm Brazilian, which means I gesture a lot. You can likely imagine. So it does. You can see, like, for me, going VR, it's like always. I know, yeah, we can go.
Be yourself in VR.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's super fun. Really like it. And Boramy Day. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So now that I've got this blade here, I can grab this hammer and let's point that this way. And then I can hammer it over the forge.
Yeah.
And I'm only going to do one side so that I can show you what happens when you forge it.
Oh, wow. You actually have to hit both sides.
Yeah. So you can see the top here is still really thick. And here it's starting to thin down because of where I was forging it. So where you hit on the actual sword matters. And that's one of those VR things that we really wanted to nail down, is a bit of extra precision that you would normally get from PC crafting games.
I think details like this make it so much more involved. Like, it's not just like a mini game where it's like hit it 8 times and it's done. You actually have to like hit it, then look at it, make sure it's the way you want it, go back to it. You're kind of emulating what it's like to be a blacksmith rather than have it feel like a mini game. I love that.
Yeah, and there's an aspect of it where a lot of these professions also have leveling trees. So as I'm forging, I'm actually gaining experience that I can then use to have special blacksmithing skills. And now we can see that with these white sparks, it means that I'm done. And that means that now I can craft it on something. So stand over here. And so I've pre-prepared some handles.
Oh.
So here you can see these lines there. And when I bring them together, they turn green. And then all I have to do is let go of the blade. And now I've got a working sword. And I can two-hand this sword. We treat everything in the Township Tale with just your hands. So that means that concepts like dual wielding and things like that, or having different builds, just comes naturally. You don't have to go through a menu to equip something. You just grab something and go straight away. So I could be kind of like a dagger and sword person, or I could like, if I want, I could have attached the dagger head to the spear and kind of have that going on, or whatever people choose. And people come up with really creative builds because on that handle I could have placed any sword, or a lot of different types of swords or different daggers. There are different attachment pieces that you can attach to kind of create like an axe mace type of deal, where typically you would just have a handle with one axe blade. But then you can have one that allows another axe to be attached on the other side, and then another attachment that lets them be on all 4 sides. So you can have a mace that's a bit like that mace from Lord of the Rings.
Sunset, I think.
Sauron's mace is.
Oh wow! So you're basically making up your own weapons as well, or
Yeah. It's a completely modular design for it.
Have you ever seen something by a player that you like absolutely weren't expecting?
Every time we open Discord.
People come up with some crazy stuff that they actually use, because some people make stuff that's unusable, but there's also some crazy builds that people use that are quite nuts.
I think that's a good place to, like, you talked a lot about resource recycling, and I thought it was such an interesting concept that you thought about actual sustainability within this game and the recycling of actual assets and materials and stuff. Like, can you mention that a little bit?
Yeah. So earlier you might have seen me kill the bird that was here. And so it's dropped some meat and some feathers. People do this a lot and they don't always pick up all the feathers, or if they eat this, I'm gonna eat raw chicken. Don't do this at home, folks.
It's not safe.
I'm taking damage here.
Oh, you're actually getting sick from it.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is a bone. You can't turn this into a bone shard to make arrows, but not everybody wants to use them. So this is probably one of the most common pieces of trash that people leave around. And so oftentimes when you go into a town, you'll find some bones like this on the floor, or like ash piles or wood cutting pieces.
A lot of people try to pretend we don't know, but behind every single blacksmith house, there is a pile of trash, okay? I've been to a few servers, I've seen that, and I have my eyes on you, okay?
He's calling you out, guys.
I remember you talking about special designated roles that people were giving themselves in servers.
Yeah. So this does decay, but there's some items that take longer too. And so whilst we have things like blacksmithing, wood cutting, mining, and all those sorts of like really core gameplay professions, there's also a bunch of like meta ones that people come up with that are completely socially driven, and a janitor is one of them. And it's grown to the point of popularity where people on our wiki now have like janitor in the same kind of phrasing as all of these other roles, where it just describes like the act of like picking up after people and throwing things away or storing things in the right places.
And that's because they're trying to keep the server clean, optimized, and running smoothly, basically.
Yeah.
For the most part, that's the case. Yeah, it's kind of like a. There's some mechanics in the game that support that a bit as well. There's a few skills in all the collection skill trees that lets you pick things up, like in a bulk. Because right now I have to bend out to pick up things individually. There's a mechanic. I don't have this ability, but it's kind of like playing Pokemon with these pouches that are like how we handle large inventory stack sizes, where you can shake it and then throw it, and then it'll vacuum things up around it.
Oh wow!
If you go to the mining shrine, I can give you the XP so you can get it.
Okay, I can show that off. It'll be a good way to show the.
And did you make these skills after the janitor role was made socially?
It was. I think they came around the same time, maybe, but like we definitely knew that like it was an idea that bounced in our heads that like maybe if people take these certain skill sets of different trees, it kind of creates this new profession almost, and that's something that we hope to enhance more as the game grows and we come up with more skills and more professions, so that people can almost create even more custom roles for the town.
I just want to say that your multitasking skills are off the chain. You're like directing the camera, you're walking through the world, you're explaining your game. You're not even in first-person perspective. You're doing a great job.
All right. So he's literally looking at like 3 different screens at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So
can't help you with that.
A bracket. So this is a repair project. These are community projects that people can contribute to repair the town. So whilst you can do things like level up for yourself, there's these things that improve the facilities around town that anyone can contribute to. So I'm going to contribute 2 stones, and Victor's going to contribute 298 for me.
I'm going to contribute in a different way. There you go.
And then we get this cool animation of the bridge getting constructed before our eyes.
I'm just such a huge fan of this, and Boramy's presentation skills are so incredible. I'm like absolutely falling in love with this game so much right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm walking backwards through this as well, so I'm looking at the camera feed to judge where I'm going. So here we are at the mining shrine. This is another kind of design philosophy that we have. Usually in games, you kind of interact with this 2D UI menu that you can access anywhere. But with the Township Tale and like its mystical vibes, we wanted to give the impression of what it's like when you go up into the mountains and you're training at this lost shrine. And you almost have someone kind of like slicing droplets off of a tree to like practice their swings. This is like the metagame physical aspect of that, where to level up, you have to interact with these shrines. And this is where you can see the skill tree that's available to you.
Wow.
And you can try out skills. Because of VR being so different and not so direct input based, having lots of buttons and combo presses, we wanted a way for people to learn how to do skills without having to actually have the skill yet. Kind of like, I don't know, in God of War, for example, you see like a GIF of what you're about to get.
Mm-hmm.
But we wanted players to actually experience it because the translation from 2D to VR is so huge that people should be able to feel things out.
It's like a little tutorial.
Yeah, so this is a tutorial, and so this particular example is what we call Power Strike. And it means that after 3 hits, my next hit is charged up. And then we can see this aura means that I've completed it. And that's a requirement for getting the skill. You have to show that you can do it before you can acquire it.
And so is there a quick menu as well? Like say you're in another part of the world, but you want to check out your skill tree. Can you do that?
No, you have to come here.
Okay. I kind of like that. I like the physical aspect of things.
Like a part of it is that we want people to kind of have a bit of more foot traffic around town so that they have a higher chance of encountering people and sharing stories and having a social encounter that way.
Nice.
And also seeing people train here, you can give them pointers and you can kind of, it's kind of like a journey of its own to go and get someone their skill points. Here's that Pokeball feature I was talking about. So here we have a pile of coal on the floor, some flint and some stone in some respective pouches. And so I can grab this pouch of coal, I can shake it, and then those get vacuumed up. Let's do the stone one next.
Oh,
and so there's for this one you can collect those 3 resources. For wood cutting, it lets you collect sticks and woodcut wedges, and for archery, you can collect feathers and arrow shafts easily, as well as arrows, which lets people. So if you were to get a combination of those, you would have some janitorial skills, I suppose. So that's.
Did you get requests to make janitor like an official role, like class in the game?
I think that is very interesting is the fact that we don't have a hard definition, right? You can be a blacksmith, you can be a warrior, you can be a mage, you can do a bunch of different things. We do not have those as names, or I'm gonna lock this. No, you can mix and match and make your own, right? So you can completely make your own character, and in a sense, it is what people think of themselves, and that is the nice thing. You do have the merchants that go and try to get as much money as they can from other people. We also see there's always someone like overpricing everything. They put on the market, they try to charge 500 gold for a single bag, and it's like completely unreasonable.
Yeah. So this is kind of where that happened. This is that trade stall. This is not occupied, obviously. If you can give me some coins, Victor, I can show it off. But we created these because we wanted players to be able to trade items and sell things to each other. But obviously people are not always going to be online to do that. And we didn't want to ask people to just kind of sit there and be a shopkeep all day waiting for customers to come by. So these are automated stalls, and they let players sell resources and kind of rent these through this panel back here. So firstly, you put in some coins as if you were like paying for your parking or something. And each coin you add gives you extra time here, and you can stock things up. Out the front here, I can put in some stock, and I can choose the price that it goes for. So I can sell one of these crystal gems for 10 coins. And then on this side, we can see, this is the buying side, that's kind of like the setup side. And here I could dump coins in here to get that, to get
buy
coins. Yeah.
And what happens when the time runs out? Like you go off sale?
So when the time runs out, everything that you've put in there as the store owner, we will mail to you via this post box here. So if I had stuff in here, right now you can see the flag is down. If Victor, if you could give us some light.
Yep.
This has got to be one of the best gameplay playthroughs from a dev we've ever seen.
It is my personal favorite, but I'm loving this. Yeah, I love that. You could have chosen to, just have it go back into the player's inventory, but no, you want everything, every design choice, if you make it part of the world, it goes to the mailbox. You want to go check out your skill tree, go over to the shrine, the skill shrine. It's just, everything is so physical. Like you're really staying true to that VR experience of like living in a real space.
Yeah, that's precisely what we were trying to do. Because essentially, when we started this, we thought, okay, like there's these games coming out that are tackling these really fun, like game ideas that are a bit smaller in scope in the sense of like the premise is like not some. It's like early on we had like lots of wave shooters. There's like rhythm type games like Beat Saber that are really popular. We wanted to think of what's beyond that. What's the thing that people who are playing console games right now, what are they looking for with VR? Mm-hmm. And so we wanted to create this kind of RPG experience that's all-encompassing and really tries to capture what VR is. This here is another one of these meta things, and this lets me send GIFs to my friends on the server that would then get sent to their mailbox. And this is useful for if you're on an adventure with someone and maybe they died and they dropped their stuff, you can mail it back to them.
Mm.
I love that. That creates such you have so many great social elements in the game, actually, like that the gameplay, like it has evolved around that. I really enjoy those kind of things.
Yeah.
Have you ever received a birthday gift in Township Tale, Boramy or Victor?
I haven't received many gifts, but I've given gifts to people.
Because in this case you need to be on the same server, right? It's a bit hard for us to keep track of every possible server that we can have something.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And here we're about to enter the caves. So I'll show that off. This is where a lot of the adventuring happens, and it's going to get really dark. So I actually need to get myself some lighting equipment.
Do you have everything for me?
I have a lantern. I don't have... Let me see if I can find some flint.
I can give you one.
So people don't have access to this Victor magic that I do.
But in reality, especially on the PC side, people can actually. Oh, sorry for me. I thought. Oh wait.
It's like one of those guns, guns situation. Just.
Okay, so I'm gonna enter the pitch black, and then I'll show how lighting happens.
But
so
yeah, sorry, go.
No, sorry, go ahead, Victor.
No, what I was just going to finish is the fact that in reality, most of our players, when they have their own server, they can actually control the servers a little bit, very akin to what I'm doing. On PC, you have a lot of control. On the Quest, you have a little bit less control. There is Boramy having fun and lighting up his lantern.
Yeah. So I'm just showing you that you can strike flames together to create these sparks. Mm-hmm. And you may not be able to see it super well if my flint doesn't roll down.
Wait, are you on your knees right now?
Yeah, I'm on the floor. You can see there's a little bit of like lighting there. You might see a little bit in my face.
You just have to keep smiling and we'll see your teeth.
something that there's very faint lights that I can probably see a bit better because I'm in VR. But we were trying to think of like, how can people feel their way out? Because in real life, if you're lost in the dark, you kind of use your hands to feel out the floor. So we added these really dim lights to your hands so that you can place them close to the floor and you can see objects.
Interesting.
Because a big problem that happened is similar to what Boramy is doing, right? So you have the torch or you have your lantern and you want to light it, but you drop it, and then where did it go? You are in pitch black and you're trying to find a thing that actually gets you out of pitch black. Right. So then by using those, you can actually just go on your knees, and then you can actually look for them, so you can actually find and get yourself out of the problem.
It's so interesting. So your chat is like, I've been playing this game for 2 years and I'm learning so much still. There's so many things that you guys added that they didn't know about. So that's really great.
Yeah, for that hand light, you're essentially translating the sense of touch to the sense of sight, right?
Yeah, that was the core idea behind it. So here we are in the caves. They're completely pitch black. We found that lighting was... there are enemies. If I go one layer deeper, there'll be enemies, so we'll encounter some of them. I'm going to swap back to first-person view because I think it'll be easier to watch things from that perspective for here. So you can see that things are really dark, and you can come across these structures. We always found that lighting was a very interesting experience in VR, particularly with like darkness and like the caution that people take when it comes to darkness. And so we provided lots of ways for people to try and light the environment. That a little bit. So here I can light these grass clumps, kind of throw them to mark my pathway around the caves.
And by seeing the motion Boramy is doing, you can imagine how we used to hit the whiteboard, right?
Yeah. I think there's a video of a gameplay video we did where there's a whiteboard counter.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
For the amount of times that we struck that whiteboard.
It's so incredible how much meta conversations you have with your community.
And I can just imagine exploring this cave with a friend and how nice that would be. Maybe one person being in charge of lighting the cave and the other being in charge of fending off enemies.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. When at this layer there being no enemies, right? It's very freeform. But when enemies are abound, things can get quite hectic because you're gonna see by yourself.
Yeah. Hopefully I can find the way down.
So what's that? Did you just teleport?
Yeah, so we support different movement methods because VR is not... Some people can't really take like the joystick movement super well. So we do support teleporting via pointer like this, which kind of lets me approach things more instantly.
That's great. You have lots of movement options.
There's other accessibility stuff that we'll show a little later because I have to start up a different build for it. But the... that we've done to accommodate for people who can only play seated, as well as some extra features that will soon be coming to PC.
Yeah, like in the end, because as I said before, right, we being so few devs, we try to focus a lot on content, on some quality of life features. But now that we are actually expanding to a lot of people, accessibility suddenly became something that like we definitely needed. So it jumped up on our priority list, and we are slowly building all those extra features in. So this is why the Quest got obviously them first, because right now it exploded, but we are working on bringing everything back to PC as well. So we are doing this merge of both sides of the project, so all features are going to be shared.
And you had like community, like you said, you knew accessibility was going to be a huge factor. Is that something that a lot of VR developers think about, or I mean, is that something that you just knew from the start that you wanted to have?
It depends from game to game. Some games that are a bit more niche and maybe aimed at a bit more of a hardcore audience might not factor it in too much, simply because VR is so already body intensive. But for us, because from both a visual perspective as well as a genre perspective, were quite mainstream in the appeal factor. So we knew that at some point we were going to have to try and support this, and the demand for that grew a lot more once we went to Quest, and it was probably something we should have done sooner. But I think with managing production schedules and things like that, we couldn't. So that became one of our biggest focuses for the last few updates that we did on Quest.
Nice, very cool.
Exactly, and because right now with the much larger population playing the game, right? We actually starting to start this process of hiring more people, with expanding the team, and because with that we can actually do all these features and do more at once than we could before, right? In the past, just imagine the three of us, the three programmers, having to do back end of servers and bugs and new features every 2 weeks. It was a harsh moment, but we did.
Which, by the way, they're hiring. So if you want to come help out the team,
So I'm currently descending further down in the caves. And so these caves are completely procedurally generated. And now we're starting to see some enemies appear down in the caves. There's some that erupt out of the ground as well. Sometimes they fight each other. And the further we go, the more dangerous it will be. So in a bit, we'll be showing how we kind of configure and how we debug the caves, how they work.
We just dropped the link to the career page for Alta in the chat. Check it out there.
Oh, got comboed.
It's interesting that Boramy can complain about the combos when he literally designed every single combo, so he should be able to see the telegraph from miles away. But every time I'm testing something with Boramy, he always falls for the combo. Always.
It's because I'm watching in all of my own animation skills.
Yes.
So we're gonna be we could be down here forever if I keep going down here.
Right.
So this is where players can get a lot of loot, like ores, molds, and more crafting recipes, as well as encounter some kind of mini dungeons that are probably a bit too intense for us to go through in this preview. But when people want, also we have dynamite. This is
also
this is worse. Very relevant to what I was just saying, but this is maybe one of the more satisfying things to look at.
Great.
And seems almost on cue, as if it reacted to the dynamite this creature just popped up. This is our first enemy that we released in the game. And they, for new players, they can be quite scary because you can hear them rumbling in the ground before they come out.
I don't think I would like this.
I was down for this game right up until this point.
Yeah.
Right up until the pitch black.
Years ago, when even before we released, right, I had a friend coming over to the office, and she was checking the game for the first time, right? Checking VR for the first time. She got into the caves. I'm like, oh yeah, these are the caves. It's dark. I have the light. And she was like walking around, and suddenly, what is this? What is this? And one popped up like 1 meter from her. She instantly screamed like, oh my God, like almost threw the headset away. Completely crazy. I was like, it can be quite scary.
Yeah, that's my reaction too, is to always, for some reason, throw the headset. It's a terrible reaction.
I would say that right after the whiteboard being hit, it's everything that we hit, right? We can attest to the quality of VR headsets in the market because we hit them a lot.
Okay, nice. Very sturdy products.
So far, I don't think we've actually broken any controllers.
We did the Vive ones.
What from Impact?
Yes. I would say, I think so. I think one we did.
At least we wore down his lifetime probably considerably. I have thrown a controller before and almost hit somebody who was not related to the company at all. It's a bit of a scary situation, but
got awkward.
It got a little bit awkward.
The best story regarding accidents I have, we many years ago we were doing RTX, the Rooster Teeth Expo here in Sydney, And we had this little booth, right, where we have 2 stations and then we have a wall. One guy, at that stage, they couldn't fight, right? They couldn't kill anything, but he did have swords. So the guy decided with big brain movement, like, hey, I'm going to jump attack this other player. And they jump attack the other player, which meant they jump attack the wall. They literally went face first onto the wall. The wall, it wasn't like an actual wall. It was like just a build thing. And there was a stand behind them. The wall started like falling towards the other booth. They had multiple computers and monitors and everything. I was there. I saw it in slow-mo. I was like, oh my God. And it started going and then it tipped back over. Blah.
Oh my God. So lucky.
I was never so scared in my life. Like, oh boy. The guy was fine. The headset was fine. The guys behind had a good story to tell. So I would say it was a success.
That's the real VR experience, right?
Yeah. So now your booths are slightly bigger.
So you can see Boramy there is fighting some more enemies.
Yeah, there's so many right now.
These are quite hectic.
I like how you took a second to look at the camera to tell us that. These are quite hectic. Now let me get back to fighting.
He died.
I died.
That was it for Boramy.
I think that's a good segue for us to jump into the actual editor to look at. So we were just looking at the caves in the game. You mentioned them being procedurally generated. So maybe you can show us actually how that's implemented, Victor, in editor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for that.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That was incredible. That was one of the best gameplay presentations we've ever had.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. So let's just jump to Victor's screen now.
So yes, this is the Unity we all know and love, right? And I'm gonna jump straight into, so as you saw, right, we have the caves and they're all procedurally generated, but we need to set all those things up. So this is the way we do it. It's a custom tool we built within Unity. Just switching around. Who would imagine opening a project that is 50 gigs takes some time? We're very messy.
Yeah.
But yes, so the whole process itself is almost, you could say, self-explanatory. You have the basic settings, how like overall bigger arching stuff is done. So where the position is, what's the prefab that we're going to be using, and then we go into the different attributes that can vary per the layer. So you can have layers that are more dangerous, less dangerous. You have what is the minimum value, what is the default minimum value, what's the default maximum value. But those mins and max can actually go change per layer as you go deeper. Luminescence, rockiness.
Yeah. So all of these attributes we can tap into when it comes to the spawning of prefabs and how the environment gets shaped to create a bit more variety in what people experience. Some of these are like I think luminosity is probably in there.
Yes.
That one is it's a bit of like this. It's just a value called luminosity, but what makes it kind of luminous are other things that it spawns based on that value. So we can assign weight values for spawning elements, and we can say if the layer generated with a high luminosity number, then spawn these luminous objects. And that kind of, if eventually as we add these little steps along the way of the generation, it essentially is how we create and can define biomes, for example.
Exactly. So yeah, like just giving a little skip, you can see this is in a sense everything that we currently spawn in the caves. So we have aesthetic rocks, we have the crystals, we have giant crystals, grasses, mushrooms, and you can see that each one of them, it has a list of every single attribute, and only some of them are actually highlighted and marked as 0 to 1. This means that mushrooms only spawn when the temperature is between 10 and 30. So if as soon as we start having layers that are more hot or too cold, you wouldn't see mushrooms spawning on those. As we were talking about luminescence, it is Sorry. The unexpected here. Okay. It's just opening. Let's give it a second. But in a sense, this, as Boramy was saying, on the crystals, you're going to be able to see the luminescence actually crystals are actually using the value of luminescence. So we define the attribute for that layer, and that defines everything that emits light. It might sound a bit backwards, because normally what makes it light is the light sources, but in our case, it is the other way, right? Cool.
Yeah. And so we typically find kind of like table-like editors for a lot of the different tools we have. And this cave editor was one of the first ways we used that. And at the time, I wasn't aware of all the things that our engineering team was going to be capable of with making these designer-friendly tools. But from this point, we kind of decided, okay, we can actually expand this out into a lot of different things, like our cosmetics editor, we have a pretty thorough cooking editor as well that I think I forgot to mention to you in the past, that can kind of allow us to control all of the different food values and make sure that balancing is easy to do, as well as test for a lot of things, right? Because we have all these modular designs in the game, and all of these procedural elements, but if we have to keep going in game and exploring through the darkness that I just went through every time we had to test something, it would take a really long time to try and get anything done. So on this cave editor, for example, we have the debug window. If you can bring that up, Victor.
I'm going to bring that up in a second. I had a little hiccup here. I am fixing it up.
All right. But basically, this allows us to kind of preview what the cave might look like, and we can input a layer, so we can see how the layer generation settings, how they affect attributes. We can put random seeds, or we can put a preset seed that players have, so that we can test the exact same cave, for example, that another server might have, if there's an issue like that.
And so once you've created a seed for a server for the caves, and that's a one-time thing, so the caves are not changing throughout your playthrough. Like, what if you've already mined everything in the cave? How does it work?
So things in the caves do respawn. So there's a bit of like this gamey element to it, where you might have cleared out a layer, but eventually things will come back. That's partly due to just kind of keeping this constant source of maybe early resources, as well as a lot of servers see this constant flow of new players coming in. So it was important to always have this ability for people to get started. Right. Things still do end up being a bit scarce, and we're always kind of changing those numbers. But as far as the cave layout and the values of each layer, those don't change unless like a server owner or chooses to wipe the caves and reset them, or players join a new server. So every cave on every different server is different, and that's to give exploration a bit of this new feeling. So you're not always taking the first left and then going down the path, taking a right on every server. You kind of have to at least seek out different places. And that's kind of the philosophy between so the town that we explored was all kind of hand designed. Like we placed all those buildings and those stations around the place, but the cave is procedurally generated, and the forest as well also is, which we'll also be looking at later.
And I'm sure the forest has a similar editor to the cave, right?
It's a slightly different editor because we tried out something a bit different for that one. But it's because it's not, so the cave is kind of like this layer, this bitmap series of to create marching cubes to shape the terrain. For the forest, we wanted a bit more control, and so we went for a node-based system where we kind of sprawl out this mesh across the terrain that defines the bounds of the forest. And then within that, it kind of fragments itself, creates vertices, and then we connect these vertices together to distinguish pathways. And a vertex might turn itself into like an encounter or like a larger spot. And so you can kind of, it's almost like walking through like a labyrinth. But for that, we're really able to easily know like which way players are going from one spot to another, what they might encounter when they hit that point on a vertex on that mesh, as well as what might skirt those pathways. And there's another layer on top of that with river generation, so that in between paths, so we almost have like this secondary network of rivers coursing across the edges of this mesh. And then the nodes then were able to know like, okay, a river went through this pathway, so we need to put a bridge over it. It's a new level of control that we don't really have with the caves, and it's something that we're going to be investigating how we can normalize it as well, because we've seen some strong benefits of both systems that can make for quite an interesting replayability experience.
So rather than just applying the forest system to a cave, you want to find some kind of solution that works for both.
Yeah, like it's a variation of both systems that will apply, because like at the time that we made the caves, we were a bit concerned about the verticality in VR, and particularly with like traversing on slopes. At the very start of the game, we only had the ability to teleport, and so moving up slopes was a bit awkward, and if something rolled down from you, you'd have to re-teleport rather than kind of like do a small joystick adjustment. So we opted for these quite flat layers. But as the kind of industry and like the games have evolved and players have kind of grown their VR legs a bit more, we found that the majority do use smooth locomotion, and so we could kind of do slightly more traditional game design, level design for games. And so we're going to be trying to extrapolate that verticality a bit more for the caves. Yeah.
So
For me, I think we might need some. Can you put up your Unity?
Yeah, can do. It might take a second, but hopefully it'll be fine.
Okay, in the meantime, either of you, do you want to give us like a rundown of all the different biomes you can find in the game? Like a list now?
Yep. So in the caves, currently you can find, I would say 2.5 biomes. So we have the regular cave biome that I was exploring, where it's completely black, and then we have one called the crystal caves, which is where you have these luminous crystals that appear in the caves, and they really change the dynamic of your exploration, because previously you were lost in the darkness, but now you have things that light your path. But there are a lot of, and we're about to see it here in the trailer, you have these lit elements, but you have a lot of these pillars that obstruct your vision, and it really adds this different complexity to how you traverse that environment, where everybody puts away their torches, they scatter, and tougher enemies appear in these layers, as well as some very valuable resources can appear there as well. So people do spend a bit more time in this portion, and it's often one of the key goals of exploring caves is to collect stuff from there, aside from metal ores. The other cave biome, although it's not quite technically a biome yet, is what we call the combat trials, and those are the mini dungeons I was talking about earlier. So as we have a layer system for the caves where there's one entrance and one exit, we're also able to insert these kind of custom layers that we've prepared, and 3 of those that appear at layer 20, 40, and 60 are these kind of combat gauntlets that players have to go through. And when they complete it, then they can unlock the path to the rest of the layers. So it adds this kind of level of progression to the caves, and it also allows people to get these upgrades for the town. So part of the exploration is for you to be able to bring things back, and we want to provide that on multiple spectrums. And this is kind of the first instance of that, where you have these combat trials that provide an upgrade for the smelter that lets you make alloys of metals and some of the higher tier metals. So I didn't show it when we played just now, but when I was putting ores or ingots into the smelter, I could have put multiple metals, and those would combine to create an alloy that you can then use to make different metal types. And those affect things like damage and durability. And eventually, once we have magic in the game, they'll have a bit of an impact on their like elemental affinity, I would say. So really letting players further customize their builds. And those biomes, those dungeons, they all kind of have like this lava, fire aesthetic to them. And that's something that's going to grow a bit more in the caves as we develop more content. Because everybody, once you go down into the darkness, everybody always expects, like, when's the lava layer coming in?
Yeah, Chad mentioned that immediately when you went into the cave.
And I wonder if you were to do an update, I don't know if you've done an update with a whole new biome that's introduced, but is that implemented into existing servers, or do players have to jump into new servers, or is it applied to the existing?
So the good thing about this is that we could probably get people to reset their procedurally generated environments of their server, so they could keep everything in town. Nice. but we can wipe all of the procedural stuff, and then they'll be able to get the new biomes.
That's great. So those two things are separated. They decoupled where you
exactly
keep your progression.
Yeah, there's something that players can do in our game, right? They can actually wipe only specific parts of the world. So sometimes we release, hey, there's this new area, there is this new feature, we updated this building, and in order to get the new update, you need to go into our command line and you just say, hey, wipe this part of the world, and it's done, right? It's effectively reset.
Oh.
So I managed to get my
yours. Okay.
problem. Yes.
Yeah.
We'll jump back to Victor's screen.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, technical difficulties here.
Nobody noticed it.
We had lots of.
Was there a problem?
There was no problem.
Yes. I think we managed to find the single combination of tools and assets that manage my Unity to hang.
Mm-hmm.
I will be investigating later, but let's not do it now. But yeah, so this is pretty much as we were discussing. I'm not gonna touch the cave editor, or should we risk the bug?
Yeah, I reckon you're probably good.
Okay. Like as you,
yes.
Boramy?
Yeah, no, I have faith in the system. Okay, so here we can see the on Victor's screen we can see the breakdown of the generation for the caves. This is something that my co-founder Joel, our lead programmer, developed, where you can really see each of the steps, and this helps us debug and kind of gauge how we've assigned values. It's a little bit there's a bit of like a learning curve to just understanding how the steps like affect the caves and what the black and white values mean. But pretty much the first 15 or 20 steps, I think, kind of build up the shape of the caves. And then here, I think in this example that we've got there is how we generate entrances and exits. So here we can scroll through how where the entrance and the exit try to locate each other themselves. And we can kind of scroll through like the almost like an MRI scan of the caves, of each cave layer. This is useful in case we have issues with like pathways not appearing correctly. We can pull up a seed from a server, find the right layer, generate it, and then we can kind of analyze this almost like, I presume, how doctors analyze MRI scans, where we're like, oh, there's like this shadow there is indicating that maybe there's something getting in the way of this. And then further down the steps, when we start to spawn some of the interactable prefabs, they look like these like scattered dots, and we can cross-reference that with the shape of the caves to figure out where they're trying to spawn. But typically what we look at for here is the frequency and the density of these spots, and that kind of tells us like how much of that resource there is on that layer. So
for example, in as the frequency, right? When we look at worms that are enemies or Turabatas, you see that it's black because this is the first layer, right? That is a layer that we define as being safe. So if I saw enemies there is where I would start to be a bit more concerned. But as soon as we increase that to be a bit, at the very least one layer down, you can see that now I have a bunch of dots. So now I actually can tell that, enemies can spawn in this specific layer.
Yeah, and that shows, and the thing that we're showing that with enemies in particular, with most things, is the possible spawn points that they are. And then there's this overarching population system that controls the like how many there are, how many there's allowed to be at any one point, how often they respawn, as well as some kind of like a bit of a like quite abstract ecosystem type of behavior, because we can say that if there's not many of them, then their growth rate decreases, for example. So you can kind of bring things to a near extinction level on that layer, for example. Or we could say that like maybe when this creature is under like threat of extinction, like they reproduce more, and so at low instances they like when you bring the population down, they're gonna spike up super high afterwards. This is not something that players can like really know that intuitively, but it does open up some avenues for kind of expanding that into something a bit more, I guess, like lively in terms of like the player's relationship with the world.
Exactly.
Are all these systems something that evolved naturally over time? Did you look at other examples of how procedural generation was done before taking this path?
We had a bit of experience with procedural generation just from our team's past experience. Our lead programmer and Joel, he's worked a lot on like this procedural generation stuff, and he's quite a big fan of it. And this was quite a particular design that we wanted for the caves, and then we just kind of executed on that to deliver the cave experience. So we didn't look at too many examples. It is slightly inspired by like the Stardew Valley model, right, where you have these layers, and we actually do have this something called the elevators. That every 10 layer or so, there's this kind of like mystical platform that you can repair, and it lets you teleport back to the surface. And from the surface, you can teleport down to it as well. So there's like some higher level design inspiration, but not so much from the implementation side for the tech. Yeah.
In a sense, this pretty much how this
on our YouTube. I think this is going to serve as an inspiration to other developers trying to implement generation in their game. So I'm glad you're showing it to us in such detail.
Yeah, I know. So besides all those technical stuff, there is also a few things. For example, like how the ecosystem came about. We really tried to discuss how populations in general work, right? So if you were to model how biologists model population growth, it is about like how the population is. Mm-hmm. So that's why we have, for example, the worms, as Boramy said, and as I'm showing. If you don't have many individuals in that population is hard to grow, right? If you need to grow a population out of two individuals, they can only reproduce only so much. So obviously it's going to start slowly, but that builds up to a certain level. At that stage, the population starts decreasing because they compete for resources.
Right.
So these are the kind of things that also we brought in on how we design all these elements.
So looking at some real world patterns and having that be the inspiration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in a sense, this is how we generate our caves. That is part of our procedurally generated content. I do have my different project here. That on this one, I can show a bit the forest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the forest is another quite sprawling environment. And it provides different wood types. It's got its own set of biomes that provide, so there's kind of regular oak tree biomes, redwood, birch. We kind of classify them by tree types for the most part. Walnut, ash trees. And those really change the aesthetic of the world. And like I mentioned with the node system, it's a really different type of generation that lets us control encounters a lot more, so that players might come across a particular point where we can kind of provide this like almost like a camp that you would get from other open world games, right? Where you can approach from any kind of direction and gatherers loot and interact in the open world sense a lot more, where like maybe you're coming from above and you're kind of climbing down, or you're coming up from below, or maybe you've climbed up some trees and you're trying to snipe targets out from the branches. It was designed to represent a bit more of that like open world experience that people are probably quite familiar with from games like Far Cry or Assassin's Creed and things like that. All right.
Yeah.
This is gonna be a true test. We'll see if we're gonna get a blackout or if Victor is gonna get through this smoothly.
We're gonna survive. We're gonna survive. I would just need a little bit of time magic again. So this is our.
Because it's nighttime.
Yeah. This trick never grows old. Seeing the day rise in a Township Tale.
It looks great.
Oh, so this is pretty much how the world looks when it's empty, when you don't have any players around, and that is the general region where the forest is positioned. And this is a bit on how it's actually perceived from a development standpoint. What Boramy was talking about, the different nodes, Boramy can take it away.
Yeah. So this is, if you can make that full screen, Victor, maybe, or something, it's just a bit bigger so I can see it a bit better. So what we're looking at here is like all those lines are the pathways, aside from the curved ones. All of the straight lines are like the vertices and their connections between each other. We can see a couple of like small rivers generated, and then there's the larger spheres, and those define the biomes of the area.
Right.
So the different colors represent different biomes. Yeah, and they typically define different trees. And different trees are used for crafting, where you can make tougher handles, primarily handles, or to have more durable weapons. And another key aspect of them is like bow flex. So different bows of different wood types require different like drawback speeds, essentially, with different power and different impacts on like the weight of the arrow, its accuracy, which are defined by what you crafted the arrow with. So if you use a heavy metal for your arrow tip, you need like a stronger, like a slower bow draw, for example. But so we wanted to bring some of that complexity over.
And do you figure a lot of that out through experimentation? Like you just try putting this metal with this wood together and see how it feels?
Yeah, it's kind of like these general rules of like these heavier metals, we want them to require this, and then we find a right balance where it's still usable for certain play styles and kind of diversify players that way. So here Victor started loading a bit of the forest.
Exactly.
And so this is yeah. These forests are generated per server, similar to the caves. And here we can see two distinct pathways, and we can see the vertex lines driving through them. Here we actually have like a bit of like this opening area. So with this node-based system, we can really connect things. We can really connect things together. So we can say, okay, from this node, connect me to these other nodes because they're all like relatively the same height as me. And then let's create a clearing where maybe less trees appear, maybe more enemies appear there, maybe a different resource kind of appears within the radius of these nodes. And then branch out to the rest of the pathways. And we can combine this with an element of handcrafted design, where we can define set entrances and exits so that players can always kind of exit the forest or enter the forest at this particular point. And then once they're in the forest, the path can be completely different. And that's kind of how we treat the blend between the procedural environment and the handcrafted one. So I'm not sure we'll be... So over there on the bottom left of Victor's screen, there's the... you can see some ruins just below you, Victor. That's an example of like an encounter where this particular cluster can appear based on like attributes like height, like height from the start of the forest, but also height relative to the nodes around it. So the node-based system really gives us a lot of values that we can work with, where this like this node knows that it's next to like a bit of a sheer cliff, so it provides this spot, for example. There are others where Sometimes we might put like a well or something, or like a camp or a watchtower. Watchtowers are a quite common example where when it's a node is maybe surrounded by 5 or all its adjacent nodes except 1 or 2 are really far below it, then we know that that's quite a tall cliff, and we can say, okay, put a watchtower there so that players get a really nice view over the forest.
Let me see if I can get one.
Another tricky thing, like I think it's hard to show with our current editor, but there's obviously all these sheer cliffs, and we have to populate them. For the most part, the way we can look at this node map is from a top-down perspective. In terms of like the resolution of how we spawn things, it's all kind of like, I guess, pixel data pretty much. So one of the challenges was how do we fill the side of cliffs? This is still something we're tweaking, but because we know the height of the different nodes, when we can kind of establish that there's like a wall kind of formed there by the terrain, and that lets us know the height of that wall and like its general angle. And so we're able to say like, okay, every 5 meters going down this vector between these two nodes, in this outwards normal, we can spawn things on the side of the cliff face. And that's how we're able to get a cliff face that has boulder spawning on it when we are typically only using this kind of like top-down direction. And that's what places some of these boulders that you might see around the place. On really sheer angles, it's still quite tough because it's not absolutely perfect, but we found it to be quite a useful way. Yeah, you can see some of those lines, I think, there, maybe. My stream's a bit blurry, so I can't super tell, but that's typically what would cause those boulders. And later, like Victor, if you're going to go in Flycam, I think we'll see that example a bit more as well.
Yeah, right now I'm just running the server so I can pause it properly and do everything.
So there we can see that watchtower, for example, that spawned there because it's at this cliff edge, and now you can get a really good perspective over a lot of the forest and the pathway back.
Yeah, a big thing that happens is while the game is running, right, we have all this streaming tech where we can load and unload individual parts of the world. And right now, because I'm running the server, it means that if I load something, I load 100% of the content in it. So I load all enemies, I load all the small objects, and all that has a lot of cost into running AI, running physics, so all of those individual elements. What we normally do on the players is that we only load a little bit of actual content, and beyond that, we load only static content, so only things that you only need to render, that you don't need to do any logic in them. So there's a little bit of trick that we do to run the game on our client servers. But right now, because I'm just showcasing this, everything I load needs to load everything, and it can get quite expensive on my machine. So I don't want to have any dropouts. So let's play conservatively here.
Yeah.
Great. So we're gonna jump to a break now, but as like about 5 to 10 minute break. And when we're back, we're gonna talk about how you actually do the world streaming for the environment, right? Because not everything is being loaded at once. So I need to optimize for the players, and we're gonna be talking about that and looking in the editor of how you achieve that. So thanks for joining us. Stick around. We'll be right back in about 5 to 10 minutes.
See you soon.
All right.
And we're back. Welcome. I just ate a bunch of chocolate really fast. So I feel really good. I don't know what you guys had while we were on our pause. Hopefully
A little bit of
tasty.
coffee.
I would like to do Australian product placement.
Yes, please do.
I do have to
There's a
say,
thing called the Natural Confectionery Company. They make a candy called sour worms, and they are the sour squirms, and they're the best candy you can get in Australia.
Sour squirms.
he's lying. The best thing in Australia is Tim Tams.
I agree. Tim Tams.
Oh boy.
Oh, that looks so good.
Yeah.
The Tim Tams have a single problem. They are never enough. I buy the pack, I sit down and they're gone. It's magic, like I have no clue.
It is magic, but wait, do you eat your Tim Tams? Do you do Tim Tam Slams, or do you just bite into them?
It's hard to do Tim Tam Slams because don't last as long, you know. So, sometimes I do. Sometimes I manage to like make the perfect moment where I have hot coffee and Tim Tams.
Yeah.
And normally one of them end up
The
a bit
ratio.
too big.
Yeah.
That's never
We're
enough.
just,
You know,
we're
like,
just gonna act like we all know what Tam Slams are.
Yeah. Victor, why don't you explain the Australian tradition that is a Tim Tam
it's
Slam?
funny. A Brazilian explaining
Yeah.
Australian tradition,
Explain
but I can do my best.
Yeah.
So as far as I got it so far, you get a Tim Tam, right? That is like this little kind of biscuit coated in chocolate, delicious chocolate, and also filled with chocolate. You bite one end, you bite the other end, and then you put it on your beverage of choice.
Mm-hmm.
Coffee is the best, in my opinion. And then you slurp as if it was a straw. So it's a straw made of Tim Tams. So you have all this biscuity, chocolatey stuff going. It's just good.
Yeah. And it just becomes
It's
like you bite into it, but inside it's like a liquid gold chocolate.
Yeah, because the chocolate melts as the hot. It has to be hot liquid typically, and it melts through the Tim Tam into your mouth. And typically, you bite the diametrically opposite corners from my memory.
Yeah, it's crucial.
So you don't typically bite the two sides of the same end. Yeah, because you get the longest straw that way. Technically speaking.
Yeah,
I see.
I am not so cultural yet, so I literally just imagine like being a rectangle. I bite the entire side, so it quickly become a mess. It quickly melts everywhere.
There's a fine art to this.
So you just put the whole
is.
Tim Tam in your mouth and just like
No, just like biting it up. And then like it starts melting on my finger, so it's suddenly like it is messy. I wouldn't want anyone to watch this. I wouldn't try this on camera. Sorry.
Sorry, chat TOS. But we're back. Welcome. This is the Alta team coming live from Australia. If you haven't figured that out yet, we're talking about their awesome VR RPG game, A Township Tale. And they just gave us a great crib tour of their game, and we're talking about how they actually made the game. And we just took a look a little bit at the caves, and maybe we'll go take a look at we checked the forest, and now I guess we're gonna go check out the world streaming tool.
Exactly.
So let's go take a look at Victor's screen. And he's gonna show us. As you know, this is like a huge game for those who haven't realized yet. So having it load all in one shot. It could be kind of a tedious experience for the user. So we're gonna see how they actually solve for that.
Exactly. So, like in a sense, this is the area that most players are used to. Oh, sorry, it's not showing yet.
It's there.
Yeah.
So this is the area. It's still everything loaded where most players are used to. This is the town. This is the little ponds. The blacksmiths over there. The big town hall goes over there. But just to first get a sense of scale, that is pretty much the entire town. But we can still keep going further and further and further until actually my whole editor, the camera doesn't show. So I'm gonna just show a quick map. Okay. So where in a sense, this is the area that we were talking about, and that is the entire world. So we have, how big is it for me? It's
16 kilometers squared. Yeah.
So
of area. Yeah. Like not all of it's filled yet. A huge portion of it is the forest at the moment. But areas like the mountains and some of the northern regions and like those don't have content yet, but that's kind of part of the plan for new parts of the games to kind of fill out this area and populate the rest of the world. And a lot of it will have to do with procedural tools like the forest that we showed earlier, where we can actually apply the same tech to create not just forests, but we can create other types of environments, because really it's just a procedural pathway generator. And so we can dress that in however way we want and have multiple versions of it. So like when it comes to what clients load, like we obviously don't load this entire chunk, this entire like 4x4 kilometers of space. We can see here on Victor's world streaming tool that there's a grid, and those are our chunk system. And so we typically load multiple radiuses of different content for players based on their position on their client. So if you're across town from someone else, you're not going to load that player. but you might load the building that they're in, or a visual representation of that building. It might not be the exact building that you enter when you get there, but it's kind of like a slightly more optimized version of it.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can see here on Victor's map the green spots he just loaded in, and that's typically what we load for dynamic content, right, Victor?
Exactly. So
like the nine chunks around that the player is a part of.
I do have to say this is like one of the things that confuse most of the people that join the team. And sometimes we pretend our users know, so we ask, "Oh, did dynamic content work?" The thing is, we have this this distinction within the engine, right? We have what we call dynamic and static. It's not exactly what the sound means, because we can have a static thing that moves a little bit, and we can have a dynamic thing that never moves. The aspect there is the static stuff is things that you cannot interact with, that they don't require any networking. So a boulder, for example, or a little spinning thing that there is on the spawn point, those things are completely static because you cannot interact with it. They don't do any logic. Sorry, it's just floating right there. And dynamic things are things that, on the other hand, you can interact. So this thing in game, they keep spinning, but it's all static because it doesn't actually do anything. But on the other hand, do I have this jump loaded? Yeah. So those shelves, they're never going to go anywhere. You cannot move them. You cannot destroy them, but you can interact with its contents. Therefore, we mark it as being dynamic. So this is like how we treat this differently, and goes a bit on what Boramy was saying. When I am in the middle of the town, so about there, you can see marks it with a little red. All this content is loaded as dynamic. So we have everything that is static and everything that is dynamic. But we also load a bit further out, because you see, from a lot of players, they're used to seeing the tower up there that you can't see right now, because we, on top of everything that we have there, we also load these extra chunks as not gonna load dynamic. So yes, load. Then I'm gonna go and they load only the static content, and that's what you can see. So see, now there's a little bit further out.
Even in this instance, you might see that there are some aspects that are not totally visible, like the tower didn't load within that distance, and so there are some key landmarks that always need to be visible to players in almost every case. And so that's where we have an additional, more kind of custom implementation that sits on top of this world streaming tool that we call landmarks. And so, despite typically there's that kind of giant, kind of Pride Rock looking mountain behind town, that's quite far away, but it's such a distinctive part that we try and load it across a lot of distances. So for that particular object, I'm not sure how visible it is in editor, but we can say from like that this is viewed from like 30 chunks away, like a 30 chunk radius. So there are things that can kind of override that low distance, and that's how we can add this extra layer of configurability that's a bit more custom and that we can treat to keep players guided across this large open world whilst trying to stay more performant for VR.
I'm just trying to find the Pride Mountain.
Yeah, and for something like that mountain, that when you have it in the distance, you change its LOD significantly.
So the way we do this is like a multi-step process, right? So this is the actual object, what we call the terrain spire. On this thing, you can see it does have your traditional LOD systems, and obviously it's going to have renders, it's going to have the collision, but it does have a few different aspects, right? One of them is the object by itself. So if I am close enough in game, when the game is running, if I'm around there, or even from down here, I do have this object pretty much as it is, which means I would be able to go through every single one of its LOD levels, and you can see they can get quite aggressive in a sense. We even include the system that is the imposters. I'm just gonna force one to appear. That is this one. It might not look great when I'm looking at it from this close. You can definitely see that the magic kind of breaks,
Yeah.
But as soon as I start getting further and further away from it, it starts to get like look better and better.
Yeah.
And during the runtime, because we use the fog to blend everything, it starts to look ridiculously better. Obviously, all this is because it is very performant, because it is pretty much just a very simple mesh that we have to render, and we kind of render this billboarding amalgamation of shots of the thing from different directions. I could show the actual texture, and that one is like a bit hectic to actually read, but you can kind of get what's going on, right?
From the different angles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that one. Sorry, go
This
on.
is Imposters by Amplify, right? Amplify's Imposters
Yes.
in the asset store.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll put a link to that in the chat for anyone who's curious.
Very, very useful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of curious. So
hmm.
what we hear from a lot of other developers who are developing across platforms, like the Switch versus PC versus the PS5, there's a lot of limitations. So, I mean, is there a difference at all? I'm kind of curious between Oculus
Yes.
versus the Quest.
There is a massive difference, right? For example, Imposters, as great as they are, we couldn't get them to perform as well on the Quest, because the Quest itself, being a mobile GPU, it does have some issues with the overdrawn. And in a sense, what the Imposter is doing, it's actually rendering a massive object that it just renders as transparent, right? So it's just pretty much just rendering a massive transparent object. As many developers are going to tell you, transparency is really bad. It's good that I'm not rendering a really large amount of triangles, but the transparency could definitely kill my Quest. So what we have to do is actually render this other type Imposter. So I'm just trying to get it too. Okay, that is this one. That is super simplified, and we actually use a shader that I wrote and just some vertex color objects. This is why a lot of Quest players, when they look at these faraway objects, they look a bit simpler, but it's because this is the only way we could do it, where we render them as opaque, but still at a very performant level. So I can easily see, like, you can see the density in triangles. It's very different between that massive object and any other object in the game.
Yeah.
So, and as I was saying, right, this is just what we do when the object is actually there and you actually need to have it loaded. But when we go a bit further out, I'm just gonna load this entire object. When, as Boramy was saying, we do have all this concept of the massive landmarks that we do. Unfortunately, I cannot load each specific one individually, but I can load them all. Just give it some time. So then we have these individual landmarks that are, you do not even have that many LOD levels. You have a completely different structure, and they have imposters on some cases. It has just simplified meshing on others. And in this case, this is my PC build. So this is what I can see when I'm running the game on my PC VR. When I look at the same thing, this is my Quest project, where I can actually see how objects get baked for Quest. You're gonna see that the imposter is gonna look quite the landmark, sorry, it's gonna look quite different. It's really what I was saying, that you can see that it's all these very simplified objects that we have versions for almost everything in the world. In all of these, do dynamic batching. They have a little bit of static batching on those. So we went through. Well, I had some help from Serena. She really went in and took different profiles from very different areas and very different views. Make sure that the draw calls are counted, that everything batches, that we can render everything. So this is pretty much how we can make the entire game run on different platforms.
Nice. Shout out to Serena, who's in chat actually. Hello.
Shout out for everybody in the team. This is definitely something that, like, a lot of people had a hand on most of these tools. So Joe did a massive redesign very early on, because we started this whole streaming process by having a look, as we were discussing before the stream started, right? How we got some tools and then we repurposed them. We started this with the sector chunks, And then by using that a little bit, we slowly started migrating away. But the very, very basics, it started with that. And Joe rewrote a lot of it to actually purpose for how we do things of static and dynamic and how we do save files and permanence. I did a part of this. Timo did the landmarks. Serena did a lot of profiling, a lot of the assets. We have Ivy helping as well. So almost every single person in the team, if not every single person in the team, had a hand at this. So.
How big was your team again? I think you mentioned it, but how many people is working on the game currently?
We've just hired 2 new people, so I think we're about 14 to 15 people now. Maybe, yeah, I think roughly around there. And again, we are looking for more people. So
thanks for the queue
page once again. Yeah.
We'll drop a link to the chat in the careers page. A link to the careers page in the chat. Malfunction there.
Yeah. And actually, maybe we can talk a little bit about that. I think we're going to talk about it later, but in best practices. But that is something, and we can show it later or just mention it. But like, that is something that for those who are kind of like, oh man, like a lot of people in chat are like, oh, I want to learn Unity, and this looks like fun, but it looks really complicated. You're one of the few teams who I've seen like actually think about that, quite the onboarding of new employees or people who are not actually developers or programmers who are not used to Unity. You actually have really great onboarding processes, and the way you manage that. Actually, it's more project management and like tech choices, right? So that people can come in and just start working directly.
Go over.
Yeah, part of it is to do with those tools that we develop, like the cave editor and all those things, so that people can come on. Like particularly anybody that isn't super like code savvy and needs to get into the roots of like everything. There's a lot of configuration that happens on the Unity game object side where people can kind of follow this chain of events and hooks and references to find out how things are organized. And that helps us with both onboarding new people and as well as remembering how stuff works when we look back at things. We're able, like particularly with debugging, we can look back through, like how populations are set up, kind of go through the steps of how the prefabs feed into it, like the timers and the curves. All of that helps us manage a project of this scale. And then for programming onboarding, it's still a bit of a challenge, right? Because they have to get into the weeds of everything. But for our artists and designers, they can do a good portion of kind of content work without having to really like change code in any way or read code to understand things.
Mm-hmm. Is that something that you established from the beginning? Like that, usually it's like really experienced team that knows that kind of stuff to develop those tools, or did you develop it before? I don't think so, right?
It kind of came a bit naturally, I think. Just because from the start, not all of us are super code savvy. Like I'm not that code savvy at all compared to like the crazy stuff that our coding engineers do. So for me as a designer and an artist, I had to kind of ask for these tools so that I could work on content, and not have to bother people about like how do I add something new all the time. Like I had to be able to follow this chain of thought and figure it out. And then eventually, like as time went on, I was able to understand a bit of how to read the code that they've been writing. But as far as getting started, like having all these tools really helped a lot.
Okay, nice. That's really cool to hear.
I have a quick addendum there that is just the fact that, maybe not so quick, sorry. It is the fact that obviously when you look at our Unity, it's very daunting because there's a lot of things. I have a lot of tools, a lot of menus, a lot of interactions. Every right click I do, there's something different going on. But that is definitely not the classic Unity. Mm-hmm. When you start at Unity, everything's like quite simple in a sense. It's very bare bones. Mm-hmm. And that's somewhat what we like about it, is the fact that we can actually extend it in so many forms. So in some ways we say we hacked it, and I can say proudly I hacked Unity a lot. I hacked how the way you guys do static batching. I hacked the lighting system. I hacked a bunch of things just to try to get that very individual and specific look. So in a sense, starting at Unity is very easy, and it allows you to get very, very far. And this is why when someone look at our project, it seems very daunting. But when we actually get to the onboarding, start explaining to someone, all these different things actually make it better, right? So that is a little thing I would like to add there.
Yeah. Thanks. That's really great insight into some of that and how you work together as a team and allow. It's really funny, Boramy, that you said like I just didn't want to bother everyone else, and I'm like kind of like that too in my teams. I'm like, oh, I don't want to like ask a million people, so I'm just gonna automate everything.
Yeah. Particularly because we were such a small team, like, and starting out at the very least, that like everybody's time was so precious, and we were doing so many different things at once. And one of the core pillars of our company and our studio is like scalability and making sure that like we're really a systems first studio, where we try and create a system before we expand too much on content. And that's kind of why people ask for a lot more content, because we provide these cool systems. But then once that seems kind of proved itself, we kind of jump to the next thing, so that eventually when we do this content growth, we can bring in people to help with that workload. And a lot of the foundations for getting that work done are already there, and we can really just focus on making like the game greater in that experience without having to overly like, you know, think that, oh, there's this other system that we haven't done that's looming over us, that this, like, whilst we're trying to create this content, and maybe this content might change based on this system existing, and it's hard to gauge what that's supposed to look like if the system's not there.
Yeah. That's so interesting, because there's so many games like these kind of more live games. You know, Genshin Impact comes to mind, where it's like a really beloved game, but people are constantly asking for content because there's not that much. And when you rely a lot on the content, then that's what's going to happen. But it looks like your game has a lot of longevity because the systems that exist has a lot of longevity for the players, right? And also the fact that you have procedural kind of aspects to it. I think we glossed over it really quickly, but you know, it's hard to min-max this game, I think. Like you're forced to, because of the different biomes and stuff, like you have to kind of have different types of jobs and different kind of skill sets and whatnot.
Yeah, I think like we try and get people to specialize. There's an element where people can have like the best, most holistic build, where they can achieve the most things, or like or they have gear that kind of can fill the gaps that they play through for most of their time. But I think as the content expands, we are looking to go more with parallel branches of content depth as opposed to incredibly deep depth. There'll still be reasonable depth, but we really want people to like have to change out their kit based on where they're going and really plan out those expeditions. And part of that comes like right now people are quite limited in inventory. But they can build specialized backpacks to carry more of like a specific resource. So that's like this extra kind of specialization that might come from their roles. And eventually when player housing becomes a thing, which a lot of people are looking for, and we're trying to get our way back to developing it, people are going to be able to kind of store those kits and then go on their expedition. So kind of like how you might swap a loadout in a different game, you do so by your equipment here. Yeah.
Nice. Thanks. What do we head to next, Hassan?
One thing I would love to see in one final thing, maybe an editor, is the actual something you kept doing, Victor, where you would change the time of day. I would love to look at that, the implementation of that Skybox and that like fog and sky system.
The Skybox is a little pride of mine. I was the one that wrote it. I hear a lot of people complain about the clouds, and I am a programmer, and I hack the clouds as well, right? So that's why I can tell you they don't look as good as they can, but they look good.
I'm so shocked at how many streams we've done so far where people talk about clouds.
I was going to say, if you're looking for some great clouds, check out our upcoming Thomas Salo's Falconeer stream that we're going to be posting to YouTube. He's very proud of his clouds.
I spend
I personally like these clouds, to be honest.
Well, one day I'm gonna get my volumetric clouds. Oh, I wrote a system once. I still need to optimize it. One day.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, volumetric clouds is something we dream about, but with VR being expensive the way it is, it's like it's a bit of a risk. But like, I think at least a couple of times in the past, I've had like a side project where I've imported like a volume, like I've bought a volumetric asset pack from the asset store for volumetric clouds, just so I can sit there in town and look at them. But it's like a guilty, unobtainable pleasure of mine because none of our players can see that, but they're probably drooling about it.
yeah. But yeah, so there's a little bit on how we set it up. So it's pretty much a procedural generated sky, which we discussed this a little bit earlier as well, right? There is this concept that everybody here, procedurally generated, so everything is random, right? So when I say the sky is procedurally generated, they're gonna think, oh, can I see a purple sky? And you kind of can't, right? Because the concept here is just that we don't have a texture that is there and we just render. We generate every single pixel as it needs to be generated. That's why it is. I can also say it's procedurally generated. And this is how we set it up. So we have all these different parameters. We have what is the ambience that we give to the world. So how, if it is a hazy morning or if it's a bright overcast day, what's the color of the sun over the day, how much sunlight to actually have, what's the color of the clouds, what's the color of each part of the sky. We define the bottom of the sky so that we can have just quickly show. So you can see that the bottom, it goes from this very bright in the early day, go to just quite white throughout the most of the day, and then you can have the beautiful sunset at the end.
Yeah, so this kind of like three bands to our sky with like the kind of around the horizon line, somewhere in between, and then the very peak of the globe that the world is in. So that's how we can give like this extra sense of depth with the sky, so that it feels like you're kind of looking through the atmosphere and into the stars, and it can feel like you're gazing into stars a bit more, as opposed to like having a kind of this flat color transition across the whole sky. This really gives the impression that there's a lot of atmosphere in the air.
Exactly.
And
we try to match the fog color to that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The editor side is like we pretty much knew that we wanted to work with gradients and curves for it. It was just the natural way, and like those red lines are really useful, so that as Victor scrolls through the thing, we can see where that point of time on the slider corresponds to all of these curves and gradients, so that we can quite easily control and configure this.
Exactly. So you can see at any point in time where I am on those gradients, because you can see that some gradients are based on the full time. Some of the gradients are based on just half of the period of the day, or some of them are just a quarter, because it all depends on what we're trying to achieve, right? Because some of these curves, they are just from the moment the sun is on the horizon to the moment the sun is on the top, or when the entire thing going from the sun rising to setting, or maybe it's for the evening. So we have all these different things. So this is why you can see that if we just look at the colors, they don't necessarily align. But as you can see, we do have the red lines that actually show where you actually are throughout the day.
Yeah. And there's quite a number of like simulation aspects that aren't super exposed to the player experience at the moment, but like there's things like we have some like month kind of concept where like throughout the year, or like, and it defines like the height of the moon and like its rotation cycles.
So you can see the moon actually rotating there as I progress the month in game. So we do have that. I'm not sure how many people in the game had noticed that the moon rotates over the sky every 30 in-game days. So
and so that like and so we plan to tie this into like, this is planned to evolve into more seasonal concepts, where we can, people like, more of the world can change based on things like on like the time of year, and maybe for special events we might kind of change the entire configuration of this, maybe to make things look a bit spookier or kind of change things up. But it's quite a useful tool. Yeah, with how, like, for a lot of, with Halloween coming up, with a lot of our kind of cosmetic store promotion materials, we our artists mess with this all the time to kind of create different aesthetics, to create these promotional images using our characters and their and like our posed models for them, so that we can really try and portray the mood of like the current season.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which I think can tie in nicely on how we do the cosmetics.
Yeah, I was just about to ask that actually. And people are already talking
segues.
about. Yeah, people are actually already asking about, like, we're talking about clouds, so we might as well go see how you have it built.
So, in a sense, this is how our cosmetics all get set up. So our artist, or Boramy can probably tell a bit more of the pipeline himself.
Yep. So this is a, like I mentioned with the cave editor, how we kind of reuse this table type of setup. So here we can see the categories that are on the left of all the different types of cosmetics that people can have. So there's arm accessories, like skirts, shirts, jackets, eyewear, like face coverings, gloves, kind of like overshirts, like a vest or like a large belt. Really a ton of different portions of it. And this is kind of where players, where our artists can configure the setup of an outfit, and that will translate to how it goes into the store. So from this point, when artists configure this stuff, they can hit a button that creates this item in our database, and then using the Unity editor, they upload screenshots, set up SKUs, so that they can, so then the launcher can directly pull from that data and display the store configuration. Or it knows how to associate the images to the items based on what the launcher config tries to do. And this is kind of, I guess, a bit of a callback to the onboarding that you mentioned, Carol, with our artists are able to use this without having to, think too much about like login details for like a web platform. Mm-hmm. This uses their developer accounts for the game to log in and verify that they can edit things. And they're able to kind of work with pretty basic tools of like uploading images, writing descriptions, providing prices for things. Like all based on of like designs and things like that, as well as create bundles that players can buy. So our outfits, for example, we sell them in, it might be like 5 or 6 items clumped together because they're all themed to like present a certain character. Those are essentially a compilation.
Oh no!
Like 6 to get that released, and then they have an ID on base, and
we're back.
Yeah, just Australian internet dropping out. We have one of the worst internets in the world, I think.
I heard people. Some of my favorite Australian streamers use their cell phone as their internet for streaming.
One of our developers uses his cell phone data. He doesn't have an internet plan for his house anymore.
Yeah, I think that's insane.
They just hotspot their house.
Just be like,
I think like they're starting to have like hotspot plans or something like that for this sort of use.
Yeah,
that just seems, or he's not going, like the data limits are high enough that he doesnn't go over it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
In theory, my home internet actually switched between the actual like regular broadband to 4G whenever the connection drops. Because it already knows it's gonna drop.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much how it goes.
Yeah, they have fail safes.
It's like I never saw that before. I got here and it's like, hey, when everything fails, you have that. It never fails before. Like, what are you telling me about failing?
Yeah, this is something I know. If there's one thing I know about Australia, it's giant spiders, Tim Tams, and terrible internet. That's the only things I know.
Those are the things that you have to know to fly in.
Yeah. It's part of your get your citizenship.
It's part of your immigration form that you fill out when you enter the country.
Don't forget there are sharks on the streets, crocodiles on the rooftops, and snakes on the grocery markets. So,
and drop bears in the trees.
Thank you.
Important.
I'm so excited to visit you guys one day. For those who want to go work in Australia, we're going to try and chat some career, some jobs to go work.
No, safety first. We're doing everything remote, so you can stay safe where you are. Okay, you don't need to come and wrestle with crocodiles. That's dangerous.
Yeah, we'll send the spiders to you via mail. It's okay.
Full experience.
Nice. Such good onboarding. But yeah, to get back to what we were saying, so we were talking about artist workflows and things like that. I thought it was really interesting that you actually built your entire cosmetic store in Unity. I don't know what the overhead for that was or how long it actually took you or your team to build that, but it's so interesting because one of the things I often hear about, or, this is why bigger studios will create RPGs and things like that, because you need some back-end developers to work on this. And it's expensive, it's very costly, they're very specialized. Sometimes you need cloud specialists, especially, I think you're working in AWS, with AWS, right? Yeah, it's a whole new, it's just a whole new system you have to learn and know. And that's kind of like a big overhead for, an artist, for example.
In a way, the thing that we do, we do have...
Having this in Unity is both good for artists, but also...
Oh.
Sorry, I'm lagging again.
So the one thing we do have is...
Victor.
There is... Sorry, one of our programmers, Timo, we definitely had to bite the bullet. And Timo had to sit down and learn everything about Kubernetes, Agons, AWS, all the cloud stuff. So today he's definitely our backend cloud wizard. And if you want to name him, he deserves all the kudos there. And the thing is, we definitely had to do all those, but on top of everything, regarding the Unity side, nothing we done, it was like in a one sitting, right? We never did this whole system in a one pass, one go. Everything had a lot of iterations. So when we started this, there was just some cosmetics, right? And then we have the sets, and then we have the wizard, because the pipeline itself gets reevaluated over time. So all those things, all the tools are pretty much live, and they can all change, right? So this is why if I just come and say even the streaming tool that was showcased before, it might look very similar, but between my two different projects, they are very different. The way they render, the way the individual buttons, the way the functions run. So you have all these individual tools that grow and change over time. And that's how we can actually manage the workflow, even with so few developers.
Yeah, that's really cool. And also, just out of curiosity, you ever thought about using cloud content delivery from Unity? Like, did you explore any of our more like game services kind of stuff?
I don't think we did. It's just in a sense, I do not know exactly all the details on that. I'm mostly just inside Unity, just inside Engine, right? So the whole cloud thing was a discussion that I'm not super knowledgeable about, but as far as I understand, it's just a bit of how we got into this place, where at first we were approached by some representative of Amazon inside one of our startup accelerator programs. And then we might as well start doing that. So we started doing for some of the content, so that people could download builds directly, and hosting costs and everything. So we slowly grew from that. That's why I imagine we never actually look fully on Unity cloud delivery services.
Yeah. Okay, so interesting. So you were just mentioning like you wanted to avoid people having login verification, like you just avoiding any of your developers having a whole different like environment that they have to work in. So I think we can go take a look at the launcher.
I'm just gonna close my window.
Yeah, no worries.
Get rid of it.
Over it.
Yeah, getting blinded by sun rays. Yes. So the another quick component of the cosmetics editor in Unity is that if anything goes wrong with it, most Unity devs would be able to kind of figure out a problem. Like they don't need to have experience in like web dev to kind of like through the interfacing there. So it kind of opens up the ability for these like generalist developers that are like these generalist Unity developers to help out with these aspects of the game as well. So it'll be useful for non-artists as well in terms of broadening the scope of work that they can do for the game.
Right.
That is definitely true. It's something that, as I said, Timo is the one that does a lot of our cloud development side. But because we do integrate a lot of things in Unity, even me, that I don't have that much, I'm nowhere near as experienced as he is, I can still do a lot of stuff. I can still grow the tools by myself just in Unity because we have all this backend service already set up.
Yeah. What was it like? So then you had a cloud developer like early on then in your project to be able to accomplish that.
We'll grow into that position.
Okay, nice. Yeah, very cool.
So,
okay.
Is there any way to take a look at your launcher and how you built that?
Yep, that's on my screen. If we can swap to that. Yeah. Okay, so here's the launcher that we saw at the start. Like I mentioned, this was released the moment that we started the game, that we started releasing the game publicly. It's been iterated on a bunch since then. And so this very much acts like an environment where people can see some of the cosmetic rotations as well as some of the like initial bundles they can purchase. So Township Tale on PC is completely free to play, and on Quest it currently costs $10. And it comes with a whole set of different perks and things like that, like being able to have your own server and having some talents, which is our kind of like our cosmetic currency. And that's how players can purchase cosmetics, as well as like a whole supported program where people pay monthly to get some discounts, some talents, access to some of those preview channels that we talked about, as well as some community roles. I'm sure a lot of the people in Twitch chat right now are probably supporters. And I can see them like in a voice call there on Discord, probably watching the streams together is my guess.
Oh, is your community actually watching the stream? That's so cute.
I think they are. I haven't fully checked. Yes, yeah, they are.
Yeah, they are.
I can see Dragon streaming it. So once our artists upload things to the database that we saw on the Unity interface, they create items here. So this is where they can set prices, and these screenshots and the way they display here, like that on hover, for example, it swaps to this. To the kind of backwards perspective. That's something that the artist configure in that Unity editor. And then when I click on here, I can see all different items and the different components of that outfit. And again, all of these screenshots are taken in Unity. They get saved to like your Windows directory, and then they're re-uploaded to the database from there. The description is also placed inside Unity, so that's also configured there. As well as the prices. And we have like an implementation person who manages this process just to make sure that all the details are correct there, and who sets up the launcher configuration. And so that's kind of a pretty straightforward pipeline for artists in the sense that they create assets in the 3D modeling software, they texture it. We have a whole configuration process that they kind of go through where they assign like which portions are covered by those items, so that we can remove things that conflict with that. So if you're wearing an armband on your wrist and then you put a jacket over it, we might remove the armband if it shares the same layer as the jacket. All those things are configured in Unity, and then assigned to this kind of database object that then gets saved in the server, and like both the game server and the clients kind of understand how to manage how all of this should look from this data, so that we can network something quite efficient to people. The fact that it's just like pretty much fairly raw data of like the item IDs and like the colors that they are to build up players.
So does the artist control? So they're responsible for creating all this, uploading it. And then how is that being, are they pushing it, or how exactly are you guys?
So essentially, then they get the IDs and SKUs from that, like the database provides, and those are visible in Unity. But then the implementation artists, like the tech artists who kind of together, they take those IDs and they just kind of copy, like paste them into a JSON config that we then upload to like what is our live release on our database, so that each launcher kind of cross-references that with the with what the database says, to be like, okay, let me download this configuration file, and then when purchases are made, we validate with that, so that we can kind of, for like security purposes and things like that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's quite a simple process for the implementation person.
Yeah, that's really great. I'm really surprised at that. Severed Skulls in chat is asking, I'm curious, how do you pass credentials from the launcher to the game? Some sort of OAuth token as a parameter, or what?
We send that through parameters, because it's very straightforward, right? When you press play, what we are effectively doing is just starting a Windows process where we start the actual game as a process, and we pass in some login parameters and everything. Which means you can effectively by yourself also launch the game in auto login by that like reason. I don't know. It's a very straightforward process. There is not that much magic going on. Just recently that we have been starting to use OAuth on a few of our different processes, but that is definitely not. It's still not like ingrained on multiple services that we use. We do use that a bunch on our web services. So how people can log in and log on different services that we provide, such as the discourse for feedback or the dashboards where they can run commands. So we do have OAuth running on those different services in a sense.
Okay, nice. And then you were I mean, this is like a lot, like, you know, it's a live game, right? So that's why I think that's why it's like even more impressive that you have artists coming in and doing this. So what does your source control look like?
So we use Plastic SEM for our source control. Like it's pretty straightforward. So it pretty much lets us have branches of versions of the project, and we create a new branch for every feature. And then like for any kind of risky endeavor within that feature, or things that were like that might trouble the waters of where the branch is currently at, we create sub branches. So it kind of creates this like quite wide network of work. Typically we build everything off of we have like our main branch, which is where PC gets built. We have a Quest branch, which is where Quest gets released, and mostly everything comes off of that. And right now there's like this third overarching branch that's trying to combine those two, so that Quest and PC will get built off of the same project version. When that happens, it won't mean that we have crossplay out of the gate. Like I want to clear that up because people might be confused about it. It just means that we can work off the same file, but within the project itself, there's like there's like a 2-branch structure of like the platform versions based on like what scenes get loaded and what contents get pushed through and things like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
You were using Git before, though. How long were you using it before you decided to switch over to Plastic?
I think we used it for like, I want to say a year.
Yeah.
But before that, we used it in other projects. Like our previous workplaces, we'd always kind of used Git. And we always had a lot of troubles with like art files, particularly large files. I think there's like some kind of 2 gigabyte limit somewhere. I'm not sure to which files it applied to. And whenever an artist, somebody who didn't know how to use like command line arguments and didn't understand like on a quite deep level how Git worked, it pretty much would halt everything. So we were really looking for solutions to that when we found Plastic. And it literally, and on the Plastic webpage, like it listed the problems that we would have if we used Git. And that Plastic solves, and we were like, yep, like that sounds good. Let's give it a try. And so we trialed it for a short while, and pretty quickly we were like, okay, this is a lot better. It's just far more stable. Whenever we had an issue with Git, like it could literally cost us like 1 to 2 weeks of time.
Yep.
To kind of resolve it. And then and even when we did resolve it, somebody's work would get lost quite seriously. We pretty much have to nuke everything and kind of go down to one version of the project. So with since plastic, we haven't had that issue, and it's become far more important since we've been since the game went live, because now we can't afford to delay something for 2 weeks because this kind of technical system issue. We need to be able to move fast and stuff, and so far plastic has not caused us to really delay anything from my memory of the last 5 years that we've worked on this.
Yeah, I mean, plastic is. I mean, I think plastic has become quite industry standard now in the gaming industry, especially for these. I think it's particularly noteworthy to bring it up for your game because you are artist heavy. You do have a lot of content. You do come out with a lot of cosmetics. I think it's really valuable to not have to create another barrier for the people who are creating content. So, yeah. Sever Skull says, artists be like, what's a merge conflict?
Yes.
Our cosmetics art team, at the very least, they just need to work on their branch. They just push, and all the stuff they do is usually quite safe. Sometimes we have slight database ID issues that cause a bit of problems, but for the most part, anybody building a release that needs to update to the latest cosmetics, they can just merge into their branch and it's completely safe. We've never really had issues merging from there. I'm sure that I don't know how playable the game is on the cosmetics branch outside of configuring cosmetics, but the work that they've done is always mergeable almost. And that's really quite a blessing. I don't know what that would look like in Git if we were trying to do that these days.
It's a little bit more work. But that's the thing. But usually that's why. Yeah. But there's people, I mean, Git is long established. People really enjoy it and like it. But yes, it requires a little bit more of head knowledge. And usually you have some people who are always monitoring that. But you just described some of the core issues that's you can't afford some of the downtime that it has for sure. Especially when you rely on so much feedback from your community as well. Thanks. That's some of the topics. We have a bunch of questions. I have a question for you. Since this is a VR game and this is our VR week, I was wondering if you had any opinions on what the Metaverse was, and have you considered the Metaverse as part of your game?
There's lots of different definitions of what a Metaverse could be. I have my vision of it is kind of slightly anime influenced. There's one of the early Digimon movies and Summer Wars made by the same director that feature a bit of this kind of bright a creature metaverse where people are flying through the sky, and it's this, it almost looks like a if Apple was a VR operating system kind of thing. Everything's wide and bright and bubbly and sleek, but things are colorful and poppy. That's kind of the metaverse I expect, where people can do all sorts of work, I guess, in this world. In those examples, they have bank traders looking through stock trades, and people selling things. There's sports, just social hangouts, and then there's this underbelly where there's this almost hacking mini game, but this it's real hacking somehow. So it's kind of how if an operating system was a completely navigatable world. I think that's kind of the metaverse that I'm interested in. In terms of hardware, what it's supposed to look like, I don't think that that current peripheral HMD is necessarily going to be the segue into that. To me, it seems a bit more like a full dive type of experience where you're entirely encompassed in there. So I think that vision is quite far in the future. But that's kind of if someone told me to build a metaverse, that's what I would be trying to do.
Yeah. Victor, do you foresee a Township Tale having some sort of metaverse element? I don't know. I feel there's already people who are in the game anyways, already building social. To me, it's all about creating a meta narrative about social structures and economies and creating new jobs that are like kind of part of this new world. I don't know.
Like for me, the biggest aspect of Metaverse or whatever we end up coming will forever be reflecting back into community. Is because that's the point, right? Like me jumping into this world and doing whatever I want is pretty much what we have done for millennia. Going through like, oh, I'm gonna read a book, I'm gonna do a painting, I'm gonna play a video game by myself. When I play Skyrim, not to say when I play 100 hours of Skyrim or more, but I did. In that case, it is me going to this world and enjoying it by myself, right? But I do think that a metaverse would be more related to community-based, where I go and I can actually talk to my friends, I can reach out to my family, I can actually do all these things together. In that sense, in my view, maybe naive, I do think a Township Tale, as long as many other games and experiences like VR chat or Rec Room, are kind of going towards that direction, right? Because I go and I do have this experience, but because I am with my friends, I suddenly can turn this experience into a different one, right? Because I can be in a Township Tale and I can be in town and I can be a cook. And that's what I'm doing. That's the game I'm playing. It does not matter if there are monsters, if there's forest, if there's climbing, because what I'm doing in the game I'm playing is being a cook. But at any point in time, my buddy might join in. I'm like, hey, let's go hunt some Goteras, and now it is a completely different game. I didn't change my software, I didn't change my program that I'm running, but I am inside this world that just branch out in multiple different worlds. And all that based on the people that I am around and what I'm experienced with these other people. So in a sense, I do think like Township Tale kind of goes in that direction, but obviously, we would love that a Township Tale grows indefinitely, and someday a Township Tale you have the portal, that you go into the sci-fi pirates in something. I have no clue. I mean, who knows where we're gonna land, right?
I'd love to point out that we kind of already blurred the lines today with Boramy like speaking to us through the Township Tale. At one point he was talking and I forgot, the real Boramy was there, and I was speaking to the version of Boramy in the game, and I took it for granted, and like we were laughing at it, but I do think there's an element to that there, go ahead.
As soon as I joined the team, right, and back in 2016, they had only 4 developers going, and at that point in time, I joined. Second week, they look at me and say, "Hey, we're traveling down to Melbourne for PAX. Do you want to come in?" I'm like, "Might as well, right?" So we flew over to PAX. I have never done VR at that point in time. Never, didn't do any Township Tale, didn't do anything. I was just doing some very minor internship contract work on a completely different mobile game, just tidying up some projects. But okay, we land in Melbourne, we go for this thing, and we start demoing to a bunch of people, right? It was a magical thing to see, because a lot of people would go, they would put the headset, play a little bit, and they would see the other player, but for them it was an NPC, right? So at some stage, they would take out the headset, look at me and say, "Hey, that NPC was great." That wasn't an NPC, that was an actual person that you played. At that point in time, you could see in their faces, their mind being blown, because they couldn't comprehend that player, that character that has so much, that could gesticulate and do all these things, could actually be a person, because they kind of get there and they forget all these things. And we were like, no, yeah, that is a person. It's like on the booth on the other side of the convention hall. People would go crazy over that. It was like an amazing thing to see. And that's why I joined Township Tale in a sense.
Yeah. ATT Siege in chat says, "We are the world's most complex NPCs."
They're the world's most complex and best NPCs.
Oh. Yeah.
I had a story like that once where I was playing the game and there was a player that was kind of talking. I think they didn't realize that the mic was on. And so they were talking about they were kind of describing what they were doing as if they were kind of playing a single player game. And then when I spoke back to him, he's like, "Oh, what are you trying to make?" And he's like, "Wait, what? They've got voice recognition? These NPCs can hear it?" And I'm like, "I'm a real person." And then I just saw his headset collapse and controllers on the floor, and then just hearing him freak out off headset. So I'm in his room because he thought everybody he encountered was just like an NPC that was just wandering around. But no, we were all humans.
Yeah. I cannot replace that. I was heavily addicted, we'll say, to MMOs when I was in my college years, which prevented me from graduating on time. And I was so it was the one thing that I loved so much, and I had to stop playing it for a while. And then eventually I was like, to wean off of my addiction, I got a PS2 or something, and I didn't have online access on it, and I played single player games. But when Twitch came back around, I realized how much I missed playing with other people. And it really resonated with me to actually just have people around all the time so that you can narrate things and talk and have that experience. So to me, VR, I was really hoping that it would fulfill that. But of course, the haptic experience wasn't super great yet. But this is the first game where I feel like you really got the feel of some tactility in the game. Everything is so rewarding visually. And it, like you said, has such great longevity because you really worked so well on the systems. And I mean, it's a testament because there's so many people in chat who's played the game for years. But yeah, so I really thank you so much for introducing this game to a whole new community at Unity who didn't previously know about it, and introducing your community to us. They're great. Thank you, chat.
Thank you so much for having us for this.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for waking up super early for this call, and staying for so long and telling us so much. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. Do you want to do a final shout out or anything that you would like to announce to your community?
We've said it 1,000 times, but we are who are interested in working on this game. We do remote work anywhere in the world. So have a look at our careers page, and we will and you can contact various members about it. And if you're interested in playing the game, if you're stumbling on the stream and you're a VR gamer, you can get this on the Quest store, or you can download the game from our website.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I hope we have you back. Sometimes I like Boramy's internet is that's it. We need to cut this through now.
So no, I don't know. It sounded like we had we were approaching finality about something, but yeah.
You asked for a final shout, so we're all yeah.
I'm used to doing all of the marketing videos for stuff, so I'm always in the conclusion tone. Even with our gameplay videos, I have to do the outros.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for joining us. This was such an informative, really great stream. We're so glad that we had such interesting VR developers here with such amazing experience and great workflows for everything. Like I said, guys, this is VR week. So tomorrow we'll be checking out Arashi, a single player stealth game. If you like feudal Japan, hyper fun if you want to learn about how to build really advanced AI NPC companions, we'll definitely come check that out. And on Thursday we'll be checking out Zenith, the Last City, and that one is a massive MMO also in VR. So we're going to give you a big variety this week of how people are building really, really impressive VR games. Thanks again. So I'll see you all soon.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.